Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Jeremy's IT Lab stream. It's been a few months. Just good to see you guys here. First, before I get started, just let me know if you can hear. Okay, I just opened the stream and I heard my voice, so it seems we're doing all right. Let me know where you guys are watching from first. We always have a very international audience. I know the live stream times don't work for everyone necessarily, especially if you're around the Europe area. It's probably midnight for you guys, so you're probably watching this afterwards, but let me know where you are watching from. We got some Canadians in there, awesome. Texas, UK, Egypt, UK. Must be pretty late for you now. Italy, St. Louis, Brazil, Russia, Mother Russia, welcome. UK, Nepal, awesome. Okay, so I think we'll get right into it. Today's stream is a CCNA AMA, Ask Me Anything, or more accurately, AUA, Ask Us Anything, because I have two special guests who you should know by now. I've had them on a couple times. Let me switch over. Okay, guys, you are live. Welcome to the Packet Tracer, the Packet Thrower, Donald Robb, and Kelvin Techie, Kelvin Tran. Welcome, guys.
Can we keep calling him the Packet Tracer from now on?
Oh, that's up to him.
He might get sued.
I mean, you're used to
I
the
think that
program
is
at this
a
point. No, it
trademark.
isn't.
Okay, so you guys probably know Kelvin and Donald by now, but let's give a brief introduction. First, Donald, can you give a brief introduction? Who are you?
Sure, I'm the Packet Thrower. Been around for quite a while. I've written a few books of Todd Lamley, and apparently we're writing 5 more this year, so that should be fun. I'm also working with INE to make some content there, and my main job is I'm Disney's lead architect.
Pretty cool stuff. So I am representing Disney today. I have my Tokyo Disney Resort hoodie on. Let's see if we can get a sponsorship out of that. I doubt it, but okay. So that's the Packet Thrower, Donald Robb, and Kelvin. Can you introduce
I see
yourself?
we're saving the best for last today. All right.
Hey, I haven't introduced myself yet.
I'm Kelvin Tran. I'm a part-time trainer for CPT Nuggets. My manager told me to say that to rub it in Donald's face. Yeah, so I work as a trainer for CPT Nuggets. So we have a couple of competitors in the house here. And I'm a university student. I'm working with Don on one of those books there, the Definite Associate, Don and Todd. And yeah, there we go.
Okay, cool stuff. So 2 knowledgeable guys. We have an INE trainer, a CPT Nuggets trainer, and then there's me.
No, fight.
No. Okay, so this is an AMA stream, so you are free to ask us any questions. And I think we'll get right into it. So I have a couple pre-prepared questions, but of course, we're happy to take questions from the chat. I'll try to answer all of your questions. Let's see how it goes. So I notice a few in the chat now. I'll get right into the first one. Pretty basic question. What is the difference between GNS3 and Packet Tracer? So for the CCNA, I think the general recommendation is to use Packet Tracer for labbing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other options like GNS3, EvenG, CML. What's the difference between those kind of things? Either of you want to take a try at that?
Well, the thing with GNS3, EvenG, and CML, the main 3 triad of your network emulators there is that they're running real images. So Packet Tracer is trying its best to fake iOS, and by trying its best, you go into BGP, you run neighbor ? You see like 2 commands there. So it's one of those things where for your CCNA, your Packet Tracer there is going to be enough. If you're going outside the CCNA, you're gonna find Packet Tracer pisses you off in 0.2 seconds.
Yeah. So the main difference is GNS3 and such. You're running real Cisco iOS, real images. Packet Tracer, it's like a fake simulation.
Yeah, it's like watching a Kelvin YouTube video. It's not real for content. But I agree with what Kelvin says. Like it's fine when you're learning and you don't really get too complex there. But as you're around the time you're able to pass the CCNA, you'll probably be quite sick of Packet Tracer.
Yeah.
If I log on or Kelvin logs in, it usually takes us a few seconds to get angry at it because it just simply doesn't have our workflows. And it's fine for CCNA study falls apart towards the end a little bit when you get to the more fancier topics, but it's certainly a lot cheaper and easier than the alternatives.
Yeah. If someone has access to the alternatives, if someone has CML, do you think it's still worth using Packet Tracer, or should they just use CML right from CCNA?
It depends on what content you have, right? So I hear this Jeremy guy likes to make some kind of labs that people like.
Yeah.
So it might be worth people playing for those labs and seeing what's there. But if you're comfortable with running a real router, and if we get to demos tonight, there we'll show you some of that stuff there. But like, if you can do it, it's definitely better. It's more real world, but
I will say it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, because real hardware means real problems. You get into the problem of you having too much at your disposal almost. You can see Packet Tracer's restrictions as a simulation as either an asset in the sense that it focuses you, or as a weakness in the sense that you can't do much with it beyond what it's intended for. So real hardware has its benefit. Real platforms, I'm sorry, has its benefits, but you still want to be careful not to stray too far from the path there. In a sense, you want to stick with your CCNA topics, even if you have the potential to run into QoS config and such.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Packet Tracer is it was made for the CCNA, so what you have in Packet Tracer is basically what you can expect in the CCNA. If you do like a show command and hit question mark in a real Cisco iOS image, you'll get tons of commands that are not at all relevant to what you're studying now, which can just be kind of confusing or overwhelming.
By tons, we need thousands.
Yeah. Especially with things like BGP.
Yeah.
Okay.
With BGP, it might actually be thousands.
Yeah. A similar question to that. What do you guys personally use for your labbing? I know you guys are well beyond CCNA now, but what do you use?
That's actually a funny question. So we both prefer CML, and I think we both managed to break our CML at similar times. So we are running E Pro right now, and we're waiting on the next release of CML, which is supposed to be like any day now. And I think it's Valentine's Day, actually.
February 7th or 9th or something like that. It releases around Cisco Live in Europe. So when 2.5 comes out, I'm installing CML. I'm gonna dual wield Eve because there's some things I'm using Eve for that I'm not using CML for. But in general, I think definitely if your CML is the more what I would call automation friendly platform there's a lot of API integrations. So if you're into automation, heck, they just released a Terraform module for CML. I saw it on one of the lead devs' Twitter there. So definitely the more automation friendly platform, definitely a platform I prefer. It's funny because I blew up my entire lab. I accidentally wiped the array that my CML was on, the storage array. That's why I'm on Eve. So yeah, definitely prefer Eve, but CML. Definitely prefer CML, but I'm on Eve.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm using CML now. I used to use GNS3. That's sort of the old school option, it seems, but switched over to CML, and I'm really liking it. Yeah, it's good.
Honestly, if you nowadays everyone is running the same thing, which is a Cisco like virtual appliance image that you can download. So there used to be back in the day that GNS3 had like Dynamics and all that kind of stuff there, but nowadays we all just run basically virtual machines, and it's hypervisor.
What I usually say is it's different lipstick. It's a different wrapper.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. I think we'll move on to another question. What do you guys think of the new entry-level certifications Cisco announced? Have you guys looked at those?
I've looked at.
I'm writing 2 books on them.
Oh, perfect. So, what are your thoughts? Are they worth going for? Should you go for them before the CCNA, or should you ignore them?
Well, definitely before the CCNA. Yeah. It's definitely trying to go after the Net Plus and the Security Plus is what they're doing. So they're trying to displace CompTIA for worthless certs, but it'll be they'll be basically what they did is they had a program called the CCT, the Cisco Certified Technician. That was kind of like a niche one that no one really knew about. And they kind of took that and they added more fundamentals into it. And I think they're trying to make it like a CCENT, which was the previous starter pack kind of thing. And they have one for networking and one for cybersec. Todd and I just got the approval from a publisher to write the books there, so we're starting to put that together. And then we'll do the CCNA when it comes out, of course. And then Calvin and I are working on the DevNet one. So a lot of typing this year.
Cool. Yeah.
What I will say on the I agree with everything Don said there. The CCST is basically Cisco's response to the crowd that says like a CCNA is that the Net Plus is better than the CCNA because the Net Plus is vendor neutral. It's basically Cisco's take this response to that. There is the CCST, as far as I've seen, is entirely vendor neutral. It's entirely theory based, and it takes what's in the Net Plus. It takes the core elements of that and then strips out the SAN, and then positions that as a cert. Honestly, I think it has a lot more potential compared to CCENT. Honestly, I think the CCENT was a little, as a designation, it was a little half baked. It was here's your stepping stone to the CCNA. We had to split it up into 2 exams, so just to give you a little push to the CCNA, here's a badge, right? I think the CCST was purposefully designed as a standalone designation, so we'll see how it does. I think it has a lot more potential to stand on its own.
Yeah, the real question is what Cisco is going to do when they add it into the actual program. Now, if they really wanted to be trying to think of a friendly word difficult, they could say like, hey, you need your CCST before you get your CCNA. I don't think they're going to do that. That's stupid. Yeah. But they might do like the old you can do this and then maybe like a part 2 and then that equals your CCNA or something. Or maybe if you have this you can skip and go like they might play with the format a little bit, but
yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens and see how they change the CCNA if these new certs influence the CCNA somehow.
And I'm sure that's going to be a topic at some time tonight.
Yes, absolutely. In fact,
the new certifications.
I saw a question. What do you expect the CCNA curriculum to be changed or revised? What topics or content would you add or remove? Do you guys have any opinions on that?
So Calvin and I had some disagreements. Yeah. I'll just caveat that I don't have the official answer yet, so this is
all of us are speculating. The only people with the official answer, I suspect, are internal to Cisco.
Yeah,
they are NDA'd up to the wall.
So I guess I'll go first. But sure. My thought is that Calvin and I looked at how they did the publish updates for data center and collaboration. And what we saw, what they were relatively sane updates, like they took out some older automation and they added in Terraform. They basically did some version of increases and that kind of thing. So where I think they're going to go is they will replace the WLC with the 9800 because the WLC is dead or basically about to be dead.
Yep.
So that's a no-brainer. I'm thinking they'll probably add configuration items to QoS because they've had it on 2 versions of the CCNA now with Fury only, and they're either going to do some kind of manual configuration or they'll add like a DNAC driven QoS just to show that kind of option there. But they've had it on the exam for too long without any actual questions. And otherwise, I think they'll probably drop Chef because that was just a mistake. I don't know what they were thinking. And I wouldn't be surprised if they replace it with something like Terraform or maybe even some basic Python, because right now there's no real ramp to learn Python if you stay all in Cisco. Like even DevNet, it just kind of assumes you know it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do some basic Python stuff there. Like probably not like, like DevNet Professional, which Calvin and I can attest on those exams. But like I think it's gonna be more like, do a hello world, do a loop, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's my thought.
So where Don and I disagree, and Don actually left one off his list. He thinks the EIGRP is going to be added to.
I'll talk about that real quick because Cisco, they feel really bitter about having to take off EIGRP. If you take the exam like I did, and I think Kelvin did too, but They go so close to the line of like adding an EIGRP without actually adding EIGRP.
Yeah.
So I think they're just going to say, you know what, either add EIGRP or they might just say, you know, we're going to add all the running protocols for a little bit. But anyway, go on, Calvin.
So here, the EIGRP notice where Don and I disagree. We talked about a little bit in Jeremy's Discord there. I don't see them backing down from their one routing protocol stance. If anything, I see them doubling down on it. So right now, one of the major oversights that I see on the exam is that as far as IPv6 routing goes, right, you're only doing static routing. Think the lack of IPv6 dynamic routing is a bit of not a bit of an oversight, a massive oversight. So if anything, I see them going OSPF v2 for IPv4, OSPF v3 for IPv6. I don't see them touching IPv4, OSPF v3 just because it's a little bit of a mind scare there for a CCNA candidate. But I see them doubling down on OSPF because my thought process there is that if they add EIGRP, well, that just opens the door for that crowd that wanted EIGRP to go, great, now add BGP, now add IS to IS, now add RIP, now add every single routing protocol, right?
Actually, go the other direction and say they're all when deal with it.
And add ODR.
Yeah, the old CCNA routing and switching had all of them except ISIS, right?
Yeah.
Including RIP.
But, I mean, my take on the old CCNA's BGP was that it was a little bit half-assed. It was, they bet for people who weren't around then, what they did with the old CCNA, the one before 203.01, is they basically buried BGP inside of a WAN topic. And then they said, okay, well, if you can configure a neighbor statement and you can configure a network statement, then you're good. And I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's a 5-minute Google search. What's your point? And so if they add BGP in, they're going to have to do it right, and they have to balance. It's a difficult line to balance because you want to cover BGP, more than what a 5-minute Google search will get you. So that means you have to get into a little bit of a theory instead of just what's a network statement. But also you don't want to step on the toes of the CCNP there, because BGP is a topic that can get very, very messy very, very fast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing their announcement. I think it's coming in May or early summer, something like that. They're going to announce the changes, and then later this year they will actually release the new exam.
Yeah, so people working on books, I think we're going to get read in on March or April, and then after that, Cisco doesn't give you a lot of runway here. Like we might get like a couple weeks ahead of everyone else, but yeah, they seem like they're really formalizing it this time rather than keeping it all secret. So it'll be interesting to see how this unveils.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, unrelated to CCNA question, what are you guys drinking tonight?
Well, this is a Glenmorangie Signet, which is one of my favorite scotches. It's basically a blend of 35 and 40-year-old scotches, and has a nice chocolatey taste to it.
Oh, good stuff. It for me, unfortunately, it is not tonight. It is this morning. I'm in Japan, so got coffee from my wonderful Cisco Champions mug.
Yeah. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, why not?
Are we still on the what are we drinking question?
Oh, you notice how he walked away?
I brought an exhibit.
Oh, nice. 100%.
Big screwdriver.
Only the best stuff. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Simply nature. This stuff is good.
All right.
I'll drink for both of you.
Quick question. This video will be available on demand? Yes. So these live videos, they're automatically uploaded to YouTube when they're done. So if this time isn't good for you, you can go to sleep. Don't worry too much about it.
Unless we say something embarrassing and then we'll delete it.
Yeah, of course. I'll edit out those parts.
Yeah.
So are you going to edit out Donald's entire speech then?
Perfect timing. Here's the next question. Bro, do these dudes not like each other? Lol.
Yeah, you can tell by the fact that we agreed to be on the stream together that we don't like each other.
Totally. Donald and Kelvin ripping on each other is a staple of the CCNA community in all CCNA discords and online communities. So, just doing what friends do.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we liked each other, I think the universe would explode or something. Why risk it?
Yeah. Okay, here's another one. GNS3 can't emulate wireless. So generally, like, how do you practice wireless in a virtual lab? How can you do that?
Well, there's a certain irony there. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have something to wireless
Physical.
connect to, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way around getting an access point. There is one tool I played with. Can't remember the name of it, but you can do some basic like fake AP stuff there. But unless you're doing like a CCNA and wireless, it's kind of useless to you. But for the most part, you have to buy access points. So go on eBay, find something there, or whatever works for you there. Got all kinds of APs just out of a camera frame here. Oh, here's one. It's 1800, but like
I got a bunch of 3800s in the living room there, but yeah.
Actually, that's not 1800. That's 1700. Whatever. But anyway, yeah, some things you have to do physical there.
Yeah.
So wireless is the obvious one.
Cloud.
You need cloud. Yeah, you can't really virtualize. Well, without being really stupid. And certain switch features require hardware.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I was surprised the other day to find that storm control wasn't supported.
Yeah, that actually,
No.
I just never even considered it wasn't there. But,
Yeah.
but I guess there's no controlling the storm. But yeah, so there's some features, especially if you're getting into deeper study like CCIE. You can get a lot of the way when you're using the virtual platforms. At least the currently existing ones are about to release a new virtual switch that in theory is supposed to be pretty close to parity. But until that happens, you may need to buy like some 3650s or 3750s or 3850, whatever you're actually studying and what suits you. And it may cost you a couple thousand, just depends on what you care about. But for the most part, you can buy like a switch for $100, let's just say, for a decent quality one.
Yeah, even less if you know how to haggle. I mean, yeah, I'll echo everything there. Wireless is wireless. I said collab, not cloud. You see, yeah, wireless. You see, some data center stuff like you can virtualize.
But you can do some collab. I heard collab's like, well, I guess that fits fair.
Yeah, some collab. I mean, to that extent, you can do some wireless. You can virtualize a controller. But when you're dealing with radio frequency, I mean, you look at Packet Tracer, see how bad their wireless simulation is there, and then imagine GNS3 trying to do it. There's a certain amount of I don't know the words for it. There's a certain amount you can't do. That's what I was looking for. There's a certain amount you can't do with wireless. They're emulating radio waves because of just the nature of how they interact with physics is one of those things that you can't really do. So if you're doing a wireless lab, it's going to be a physical lab on the APs. Now on the controller side, if you want to virtualize like a 9800, that is totally a thing. There's the 9800 CL there that you can run. If you want to stick with AeroS there's a virtual WLC appliance there, but
there are some caveats there too. But
there's a
pretty far with these kind of things. Like I use a USB Ethernet there to connect to virtual machines for like ice labs and that kind of stuff. I also have
I actually got one right here.
Yeah, I actually have like a bunch of USB wireless ones there, so I can do wireless training with people when it's necessary to do videos. So depending on what you want to do, but there's always going to be some physical component. And as much as I like virtual and I advocate for it, there is you should have at least some physical exposure when you're studying and whatnot. There, you don't want to be that guy who just never had to use a console port before and. Yeah, you don't actually know how to connect to things properly because it's you always just clicked in on GNS3.
Yeah. There's a reason in my CCNA course that the wireless section is the only one I bought actual hardware for. Bought a couple APs and an old wireless LAN controller because there are limitations to virtually.
I will say Don has a point there in terms of not being completely unexposed to hardware. But in the same token, you also don't want to go crazy, right? You buy a switch, you buy a router, you just get that physical exposure, get the exposure of TFTPing or realistically SCPing an image onto the device. But at that after that, you're getting into knobbing actual features. BGP is BGP, regardless whether you're running on a CSR or a CAK or a 1800 series router, which is realistically what you're getting for $50-$60 off of eBay. So it's one of those things where you want that physical exposure, but you also don't want to go overboard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good for that question. Here's another one relevant to recent developments with ChatGPT, etc. Do you believe AI will take over jobs as a network engineer? So,
I mean, I don't know what it is about the IT crowd, but we're the most fear-mongering crowd I've ever encountered in my life. I mean, I got to rant about this for a minute.
Sure, feel free.
Like, I remember back when I was up and coming, like every time Microsoft released a new server, like Server 2000 or 2003, it was the end of MCSE, man. They made so many improvements. Like, have you heard about this Active Directory? We don't. And then after that, what was it? It was the first they tried automation with like some of the Cisco features that Kelvin would know about, and that's about it. But they tried that, and then that failed, and then EIGRP was going to be it because it had a bunch of it could pick your own latency and track your delay, and that never worked. And then it was cloud, and then it was like every little thing there is the end of our career. There's like we're all just kind of bracing, waiting for like the sky to fall on us or something. Like, come on, guys, man up a little bit. But like it's no, I mean, as long as I like to say that IT is like a treadmill, right? You're walking along, you're happy or whatnot. If you fall asleep and like wake up like a week later, and maybe you're gonna have a problem, but like it's you might go to the hospital if you sleep for a week, but but you as long as you keep going there, like everyone says, like IT moves so fast, and it's actually really gradual. Like I mean, we're still largely installing operating systems and stuff this way we were like 30 years ago. The only difference is that maybe it's on a virtual machine, but you're still mounting ISOs or whatnot, unless you're getting really fancy with templates and that kind of stuff there. So we're still configuring OSPF the same way that it was when Brian McGann got a CCIE in like the 1800s. Like
they got CCNA in the 1700s.
Yeah, or when Todd Lamley wrote his first Cisco book in like 92. Like it's a lot of this hasn't really changed here. As long as you're, paying attention to the field, like, hey, if you're the guy who's racking a server and manually installing Windows and you're not paying attention to that system center thing that's they're making, then maybe you should start working on that there. If you're a PBX guy and you're laughing at that crazy voice over IP thing, maybe you should do that there. But for the most part, it's not like, hey, industry's gone tomorrow. I played with Chat GPT. I find it very primitive. Like when you ask it like questions and you actually can rate the answers, like it's usually not what you would say there. So it's cool tech, and sure. I mean, will someone eventually try and like replace their knock or something with a ChatGPT? I'm sure someone's crazy enough to try it, but these kind of people are the same kind of people who will every now and then like send their knock over and outsource it, and then they bring it back because it's causing problems. And like no, as long as you stay ahead of the curve a little bit, you're going to be fine. And if you're staying at the edge here, and well, it is what it is. But if IT jobs can be taken by Chat API, that means they can also take accountants' jobs and all that other stuff. So
yeah. I mean, my thing with ChatGPT there, I played with it a little bit. I've seen the consensus, which is that ChatGPT can be right a lot of the time, but when it is wrong, it is very, very confidently wrong. And my thing there, I actually had this debate with someone on a Chuck server there. Someone on Chuck server was going, ChatGPT is going to eliminate the jobs of network engineers. Your job as a network engineer is not to, it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but it isn't solely to configure stuff, right? You tell ChatGPT to configure OSPF in area 0, it'll spit out configuration, but you could have just as easily Googled enable OSPF in area 0, a human could have, and you would have gotten the same answer, right? So the role of a network engineer is not just to know how to configure OSPF, it's to know that you need to use OSPF in the first place.
And actually, I'm just going to jump off that real quick because that's basically being a constant thing there where people say, I don't need to learn this. I can just Google. It's like, no, you need to know this core knowledge. Like, what happens if the internet's down, or what happens if chat GPT's down or something, or you need to know this core knowledge there. And if you don't have enough skill set to, if you have to Google something and you be able to read and say, oh, that's actually going to wipe out my network or delete all my VLANs or stuff like that there, and you paste it in, then now you're just a liability, right? So
so ChatGPT is good because it can draw information from the internet, but it's up to the human using it to actually do that human interpretation of that information. It is, after all, just like a language model. It's just pulling words off the internet and it's piecing things together. It doesn't know what any of those words really means. It doesn't know what OSPF is per se. It can put those words together, but it doesn't know what OSPF. It doesn't know what BGP is, and so on and so forth. So
just like no videos.
I walked right into that one.
I agree totally with what you guys said. There is a lot of fear mongering in IT. Like everyone's looking for the next thing that's going to take our jobs away. But network engineering, it's going to change. What you have to know is going to change. It's going to evolve. But that doesn't mean that network engineering is going to disappear because, we need
Honestly,
networks. There's a lot more to network engineering than just making configs.
Honestly, the role of, and I'll bounce off of that, the role of network engineering is going to change. Absolutely. The role I see of things like AI and ML, and you see Juniper using it, like Juniper Mist. You have that, Mist has that chatbot you can use there.
Marvis,
yeah. Marvis AI, yep. So, Marvis didn't kill network engineering. It's not there yet to be able to kill network engineering, but Marvis. But, AI is just going to save time. That's all it's going to do. Saving time is not necessarily equal the elimination of a position.
AI is good for I've seen a lot of management companies when I try and use API, and you need very, very clean data and need very, very simple questions. So you can do something like, hey, my network looks like this normally, and if something goes differently, then maybe put it back to the way it should be, that kind of thing. But and when you're a junior, you're probably like, oh yeah, I'm so excited, I get to add like 10 different loopback interfaces, but when you get more and more senior, like, make the junior do it or automate it, I don't care. So it doesn't really matter what the actual execution of that is there. When you become something like an architect like me or a consultant or those kind of people, most of it is just defining the process, working on the design, doing the other stuff there. And depending on your actual role, you shouldn't be touching the keyboard much at all unless it's just how your organization is. But as you get more senior, you're ironically doing less usually.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think that's enough for that question. Okay, here's another one. How important are the wireless portions of the test in a small, mid-sized environment? So I think he's asking generally, how important is the wireless portion of the test? Is that something a junior engineer is actually going to use in their job, or what do you think?
Well, I guess there's two ways to answer that. First is you will fail if you don't know the.
So
the CCNA is very good at testing that absolutely everything on that exam list. All the new Cisco exams are.
So you can't be lazy with the exam list. Now, in terms of what's practical, here's the thing. Every company is going to use some form of wireless. Is every company going to use the type of wireless that's in the Cisco exam? No. They might use other vendors. They might use other versions of Cisco like Meraki. But if you understand the basic concepts or whatnot, it's not bad information. Now, maybe the small part about configuring WLC or 9800, if I'm right about that, sure, maybe that's more neat to see and not useful, but you can generally infer how something's done on, say, an Aruba if you know the outside. Anyway, go on, Calvin.
I mean, it's the same logic as the rest of the exam. Honestly, you can make the argument that, oh well, if the company I work for uses Juniper, then the Cisco iOS configuration I'm learning here means nothing to me. But if you know how to configure OSPF on Cisco, it's not that much of a stretch to go configure area 0 on the Juniper there. There are some Juniper quirks you have to keep in mind, but that's just the nature of the beast there. So it's the same question you're asking for every other part of the exam. Yes, your company might not specifically use that vendor, might not specifically use that technology. Heck, your company might be using a D-Link Soho wireless router in the back of the closet there. But knowing that conceptually, you can carry that with you.
Because your next job might use that wireless, and that's useful. Yep. Or that company might say, hey, look, this wireless sucks, so we need to evaluate wireless there. And you go, hey, I know Cisco a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder why the D-Link in the back of the closet can't reach 50 feet away.
Yeah. Okay, good. Here's one. We don't exactly have a neutral panel here, but what is the best book to study for the CCNA exam?
Well, obviously not Jeremy. So my book was called
yet. So
yeah. So I mean, I will give my honest take. Calvin could probably be more the neutral guy, but I feel that Oda missed the mark on a few of the newer topics. Particularly, he saw DNA Center and said, "Oh, SD Access," and then ran in that direction. And he went a little bit off the rails with cloud and that kind of stuff. Now, the core concept stuff is good, except for BTP, which I'll probably talk about sometime tonight. But I feel that he did a pretty good job of everything else, but missed the mark on the say like scripting and whatnot. And Todd and I, we did pretty good on the newer topics. And it really just comes down to, do you prefer Codd's more conversational writing, or do you prefer Odin's more dry and technical?
I mean, yeah, that's been the traditional separation between the two. Is the OCGs are fairly technical pieces of writing, whereas you get entrants like Todd, like Jeremy. I assume, I haven't read your book, Jeremy, but I assume that you're more conversational in a sense than Wendell is. And so it's one of those things where you got to think about what style fits with you more. And the other thing is, on the note of the newer topics, I've read both of the books. Todd and Don's book ends up covering things like SDA better, because Odom ironically did a little bit too much in my view.
DNAC better.
DNAC better, my bad. He did, you guys did DNAC better by not going into SDA. So Wendell is a great guy. I want to preface this with that. Everything we're saying here, Wendell's a great guy. He is.
Fight me, Odom.
He is really good with the topics that have been on the CCNA for 10 years.
Except V2P.
We'll talk
VTP is the enemy. We'll get to that one later.
We'll get to that one later. But with things like DNAC, with things like automation, it's very new territory. You got to keep in mind the context, right? The 200-301 came out in 2020. Authors have a few months in advance, and even then they're getting the same exam topics that we're getting for the most part.
Yeah, Cisco does not say, hey, Donald, this is what we mean by adding Ansible. And we'll go, oh, that's cool. No, they just say Ansible.
And use your best judgment, right?
That's a very important point I just want to touch on. The Cisco press books, they are the official cert guides, the Wendell Odom's books. But official means they have, Pearson has an agreement with Cisco. Cisco's backing them, but
Cisco
Wendell
press
Odom doesn't have special access.
It's branding. It's not official in the sense that Cisco opened up the test bank to Wendell and let him look there. And so when Wendell covers things like Lisp and VXLAN and SDA and all this fancy tech, it's because he Googled DNAC, and the most flashy use of DNAC is to provision SDA fabric, but that's not the only thing you can use it for. And so,
long story short, just buy both books. I mean,
if you can.
Yeah, if you can, both for sure. Yeah.
And if you can't, then pick the one that you like better.
Yeah, and you don't have to go through all of both of them.
They're both great books.
Yeah. Both are good. Both are good options, whichever style works for you. If you can get both, supplement one with the other. But you can't go wrong with either option.
I will say as a concluding note to this particular question, though, just because we see it occasionally in the Jeremy's Discord there, if you come across the list chapter, if you come across the VXLAN chapter, and you go, oh boy, this is going way over my head, the CCNA won't actually test you on that. Lisp basically flips routing upside down, and then multicast takes it backwards. So so this is one of those things where if you don't have a very, very strong grasp on foundational routing, on doing it the traditional way, you're going to have a pretty hard time there. So I wouldn't worry too much about it if you're struggling on the list for the VXLAN chapter, sir.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So to summarize, the two main books that people use for the CCNA are the official cert guides by Wendell Odom and the study guides published by Todd Lamley and also co-written by the packet thrower here, Donald. You can go with either of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, both are good. Okay, let's go on to the next question. General question about studying. You guys have studied for and passed a lot of tests, a lot of certs.
Some more than others.
Some more than others. Some people have over 100 on Credly. But okay, the question is, how did you deal with the process of studying for and internalizing for the CCNA? This guy finds it so overwhelming. Do you have any tips? What do you think?
Oh, you just got to keep at it and make a good work and study ethic and figure out what works for you. I have the benefit of doing a ton of practical, like real world stuff there. Calvin's probably, when I put over to him, probably have more because he's more of a coming in from a straight up student. But by my side there, like I did like the training courses back in the day before we really had like GNS3 and that kind of stuff. And did the Neticat back in the day and that kind of thing. And, I just keep chipping away at it. I would throw myself at any consulting opportunity I could do on those kind of freelancing sites. And I would basically do whatever I could to build up my brand. And I was purposely making sure I was multi-vendor and that kind of stuff there. But, and when you get to a point, like after you write a few, once you get used to the exams there, you can start realizing like, okay, what are they actually doing there? Like when they ask you like, hey, what's the routing table? They're usually not saying like, okay, we want you to read the routing table. I mean, they're usually like, there's a point to the question. They're trying to so if you read it, you can map it to things like, okay, what topic is this? What are they asking? What do they want me to learn? And then you can usually throw out a bunch of answers, and you can say like, okay, well, this is a junior exam, so they're not going to be asking about Lisp like Calvin mentioned. So while it's technically possible that a server can be a NAT server, that kind of thing, that's probably not what they're going for, and that's what we call the senior trap, right? Where you know more than the exam and you get in troubles. So just keep at it. And my last point before I turn over to Calvin would be that don't be rigid. Like some people say, like, hey, should I study like 8 hours a day or 16 hours a day? Or it's like, no, I mean, come on, man. Like just figure out what works for you. So like if that's read a chapter a night, or I like to say this, learn one thing, practice it a little bit, and then move on next thing. Like don't overload yourself. You're not gonna win any awards by if you tell me you read 50 pages last night. It's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you and on that note as well, finishing the one exception to this, I will preface by saying the one exception to this is if your employer is forcing you, is forcing your hand. So if your employer is saying, look, you gotta get your CCNA in 6 months or you're out of here, that's obviously a situation where you don't really have a lot of leverage there. But if that's not the situation, and I will imagine that's not for most people, they're just doing this as a personal goal, as a professional goal, just to advance. Don't pressure yourself into a timeline. Everyone's study schedule is different, like Don said. If you have a gaggle of kids and you can only fit in an hour every night, go for it. If you're someone younger like me and you can fit in 8 hours in a weekend, go for it, right? It's all about your personal timeline, what works for you. What I will say as far as study tips go for the CCNA is that you don't want to focus on memorization. That's kind of the the trap I see a lot of people fall into, and they'll take out this ginormous stack of flashcards and you go, okay, I have to memorize this command, and I have to memorize this fact about NAT, or memorize this fact about BGP, or whatever the technology is. And your goal should always be understanding, right? Memorization and understanding are not the same thing.
Yeah, you need to know and learn it, like internalize it, whatever makes sense to you. Like, don't learn that this is all the different protocols for IP or command. To say like, okay, well, I know because I practice it, I need an IP address and that kind of stuff. And
right, you have to, going back to the AI, what we said in the AI conversation. You're human, right? You're the value in you being a human and working at a job is you understanding what you need to use and how you need to use it, right? And just memorizing what OSPF stands for, like something that plus what have you do, that's not valuable. But ChatGPT could tell you what OSPF stands for, and it might tell you wrong, but it could tell you. I imagine Don's gonna go try it now.
I was tempted, but I was like, yeah, too much typing.
And so focus on, my biggest step, focus on understanding. Don't rush through memorization. I mean, I'm straight out of high school. I can relate to the idea of studying facts just to remember them and then regurgitating them on a test and then forgetting half of them the next day. I remember the other half.
Remember, the actual certification is it's not the end goal. Like
it's a milestone.
Yeah, it's a milestone, but like if it's not like a class where you write your final exam and purge all that data and move on because you're in university. This is like you're going to get a job interview, and someone like me is going to sit across from you and say like, okay, well, what is XStart and OSPF? And you're going to go, oh, I did the exam 6 months ago, and I don't remember
about that one.
Yeah.
I've actually had that a few times.
Yeah, I agree generally with what you guys said. Definitely focus on understanding before memorization. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, make sure you understand a topic before moving on to the next one. Otherwise, there's just going to be more things you don't understand. You're going to feel more overwhelmed. So,
yeah, I'll just 2 points before we move on. Is one, make sure you're building a solid foundation. It's critical. Like I know CCNA seems like a lot, and it is if you don't know anything there. But in the grand scheme of things, like it's something like, I don't know, 10% of the CCNP and subset of the CCA. Like it's very minor there, and then you have all your different tracks. Like it's a mountain of information there, and if you lay all that on a faulty understanding there, it's like if you go to martial arts and you learn how to kick wrong, like you're going to lose your fight, right? So you want to make sure you have a guy.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah, I got kicked in the face a few times
on the job.
We'll see if I was watching.
All right, let's move on to the next question. I actually got a couple super chats, so I should answer these ones. Thank you, V77, for the $2 tip.
We expect 80% of your super chat revenue.
Okay, sure. YouTube takes 30, so we'll have to divvy up. Question: CCNA or cybersecurity if I want to work remote? Do you have anything to say about that?
So this is another rant.
All right, here we go.
Now, I've been reading the rants for a while, so I'll let Calvin start first.
No, you can have it. I got mostly because I misheard the question.
It's basically CCNA or cyber ops.
Oh,
or cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity, yeah. He wants to work remote. Yeah.
I mean, the thing about remote work is that every company and their dog transitioned to it because COVID, because you can't feasibly host many people in an office, and then 2020, it's 2023, it's 3 years after the pandemic started. You can have your opinions about COVID and all, but I mean, the reality is a lot of companies are back to office, and that means that they take most of their junior roles back to office. Now, I won't say that you can't find remote junior roles. There's always some nuggets of gold out there, but the way I word it, you shouldn't make it your make or break condition, right? It's not. I better get remote work or else. It's you will get to a point in your career where remote work becomes feasible in a widespread manner across the job postings that you're looking at. But
yeah, that window closed for most.
Yeah, but the junior level, right when you're starting off.
Remember that what you're bartering with is not a lot. Like usually it's a perk for seniors or whatnot there for a number of reasons, because it takes a lot to bring them over in the company, that kind of thing. But if you're a junior and you're brand new CCNA, it's like, okay, well, I got 800 other candidates. So if you're not going to play ball in that regard, and I'm not set up for remote workers, or I don't want to for whatever reason, then just keep an open mind. But for the actual cybersecurity versus CCNA question, this is kind of this is going to be a rant. But
before the rant,
Yep.
my answer will be quick, and then I'll let Don rant. Regardless of whichever track you pick, CCNA or cybersec, when you move up enough in either of those paths, you will get to a point where remote work becomes feasible. It's a seniority, trust thing, rather than you're a network, you're a pathetic network engineer, so you don't get remote work kind of thing. So keep that in mind. It's less a path question, more have you established that trust that you're going to be productive at home.
Yeah. So basically, the whole cybersecurity craze that's going on is largely snake oil. Like it's basically created from nothing, in the sense that someone like Network Chuck is looking for content, so he makes a hacking video one day, and then a bunch of kids see that and they make it him $1 million on all his added revenue, and then he goes, okay, I need to make more videos, and then he creates it there, and then eventually, like the colleges, because they want to make money too, they go, okay, well, this is really popular, so they make courses. But the people who actually hire the cybersecurity people, they don't want juniors. They want intermediate people who have worked in networking and infrastructure and application stuff. Like you need to know what you're securing. So what I always like to say is, like, cybersecurity, you may learn how to scan a web server, and that's fantastic, but I want someone who can build a web server. And so what they're finding is that when they get into the cybersecurity degrees or the certifications, whatnot, they either get stuck into like a log reading role, and they don't really have a way to move up, because all seniority roles require extra experience, and then they're scrambling to learn their CCNA and stuff afterwards so they can get out of the grunt work, or they just flat out don't get a job, and then when they try and apply for an infrastructure role like traditional IT, they go, well, you don't have the skills we're looking for, and we're just going to pick someone like Kelvin, who picked like this CCNA, and he's much cleaner to work with there. Because when I read a resume, there's not a lot to read when you're a junior. So basically, like, what certs you have, and you say like, okay, you're CCNA, so okay, you're not excluded from anything. But if you pick, say, a Java certification, then it's like, okay, well, you want to be a Java programmer, and you probably don't want my network operations job, so I'm going to give it to someone who's more focused on networking. And it just leads to the whole thing. So make sure it's like we're saying about the foundations. Like, if you want to go to cybersecurity, perfectly fine, but it's a goal. It's several years out.
It's a long-term goal. It's not.
I mean,
build your foundation and then go from there.
Okay.
To be fair, if you can get a Java cert, that just shows that you have a high tolerance for insanity.
Sure. I mean, you can get a job of anything, right? I mean, I'm sure if 10 homeless people started screaming at me on my way to work there, I'd hire one of them. It's like, okay, I like your moxie. But
all right, if you want a job at Disney, you know what to do.
Yeah. Sorry, Albany, if you're watching this. But yeah. So anyway, just build it out there. Like, you need to build the foundation. So do your networking roles, do your help desk. You got to pay your dues one way or another, is what I like to say. And eventually you can start working in more security projects, and you can start to see, do I actually even like this there? Because a lot of people, they think like it's all Mr. Robot there, where you or Die Hard 4, where you like press the keyboard a few times to blow up a power plant, or it was a gas plant, actually. Good movie. I watched it with my wife. But long story short is that you got to build there, because you might go like, oh, this is actual security. It's teaching users not to click on email links, and basically looking at his Adobe Flash. Actually, that's dead now. Is Adobe Acrobat vulnerable to this latest report?
Yeah, it's not as flashy as it seems.
Yeah, it's like a lot of boring, monotonous work, and it's it can
Great,
be
nothing
enjoyable.
wrong if you're interested in that, but
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
I'll be
but I'm saying,
realistic.
like, before you dive in, it's like, oh, I'm gonna do my offensive security certs and dive in. Like, pen testers are like 1% of like the 1%. Yeah, like if you want to work 7 years to be an actual pen tester and that kind of stuff, cool, good for you. But it's a very particular path. It's like someone saying, "Hey, I want to be a CCA." It's like, good for you. That's a 10-year goal usually.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good coverage of that question. Okay, let's take another one. We got another super chat, $5 from Norman Robinson. Thank you.
Ooh.
Yeah,
$5.
all right. So the question is, what's your take on the prospect of learning the Cisco Meraki API syntax as network programmability becomes more relevant?
API. Okay.
I thought that was going to go an entirely different direction. Okay.
Cisco
well,
Meraki,
I'll,
is it worth learning the API? Like, what do you
Well, that's
yeah.
two different things, right?
Yeah. That's two different questions there. I mean, I guess we can answer both of them.
Just do it one at a time. So Cisco Meraki.
Yeah.
You want to go for it? I'll go for it.
Yeah.
I'll go for it.
You can have it.
Sure. So Meraki is great for its intended market and not so great for its non-intended market. So what I mean by that is that if you're a small branch or a small low-skilled IT company and you just don't have the funds, or you just can't justify hiring like a CCNA or CCNP to manage your network, that kind of thing, and you just want to be able to have like a very easy environment where everyone can log in and do things, and for the most part you won't have all the bells and whistles, but it might be good enough, then Meraki is certainly a good opportunity, or a good choice. When you start getting into things like, okay, I need multicast, I need routing, I need all these some more fancy features, that's where Meraki kind of falls apart a little bit, because it's you'll find that its simplicity is masking how to do things, kind of like when you log into a D-Link and you're like, oh, well, why can't I do it this way? It's like, well, no, D-Link is, you have to fill out this checkbox, and same idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Well,
Meraki
better features than D-Link. To be fair.
I think Meraki a bit low in souls that they just compared to the D-Link there. So I mean, so the second part of that question, I mean, the question that the $5 super chatter actually asked, is it worth learning the Meraki API for network programmability? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So if you're doing something like the definite associate there, they will test you pretty heavily on Meraki. If you're doing something like the dev core,
and everything
you will cry in Meraki. And if you are using, certainly if you're using Meraki and you want to automate it, Meraki has a pretty good API. They have a pretty good number of APIs actually.
Yeah, they got like 4 of them.
Yeah, I got 4 of them. But should you just randomly learn Meraki
fine.
APIs?
It's not a bad thing to learn with. If you don't have Meraki, then unless you're like want to be a DevNet person, then you don't need to learn it. Though, mind you, they do have DevNet sandboxes where you can play with Meraki and stuff if you want to. But it's a reasonable API. Like I've done more practical things with it, and there are some guidelines there where it falls apart a little bit. They're always working on it and whatnot, but there's worse APIs out there. Looking at you, Palo Alto. It's play with it if you want to. There's worse things to use, but there's also better things. Just depends on what your goals are.
What I will say as a general note is that you should never learn the API for something before you actually learn the platform. And this is, it's funny. It's a segue into talking about the DevNet track as a whole, right? If you're the point of the DevNet track is that you're learning the APIs for CCM and Meraki and all these ICE and all these different platforms there. You gotta understand what the platforms do first. You gotta understand how to use Meraki before you can understand how to translate those things into API actions and API resources. And so, to that end, I think if you are, like Donald said, if you're not using Meraki, it doesn't make sense for you to learn the API for Meraki unless you just have a reason to. In which case, you know what, knock yourself out. But
yeah. Yep, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. We got a super chat from Razvan. This isn't a question. He says, "I hope the GUI based questions go away soon." Are you referring to like wireless LAN controller GUI based questions? I wouldn't count on those going away.
DNAC 2.
Oh, DNAC. Yeah.
Well, I will answer a question with a question. Have you tried the WLC CLI, sir?
The Arrow CLI sucks.
Yeah. So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, try getting the software version with Arrow OS.
But to be fair, I mean, there are some platforms that you simply will use GUI. There's a number of them out there from the Cisco land and others, like ACI, for example. You're going to be using, which is their data center SDN. DNAC is obviously more web driven. SD-WAN, like there's CUCM, or actually all the collaboration tools.
Yeah.
A lot of it, like you're simply going to be using GUIs, and I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable for Cisco to say, hey, how do you configure this SSID on with a GUI, because that's what most people are going to be using. Now, if they say like, how are you going to use like prime infrastructure to configure an SSID, is like, okay, that's a little bit more unfair, but like it's I don't think I think I had a debate with someone on your Discord. I think all of us there too, but they were quite upset about the GUI questions. I don't know if it's the same person.
I think I remember it was Jeremy's Discord, yeah.
But anyway, it's if you know it, it's a relatively simple point, and just do the question, move on. And if you don't know it, well, like Kelvin said, you need to know all the topics. Like, they're not kidding.
Yeah, I don't understand the hate for GUI. I frankly don't. Is it like is it that punching in a command in a secure CRT just looks cooler? Because like, if you're giving me the choice between configuring a routing policy on vManage GUI and configuring it on the CLI, there, I'm taking GUI every day of the goddamn week. It's just, the CLI is
your monetization or monetization.
Hey, he's getting super chat, so it's fine. But no, I mean, the GUI has a place, right? Now, obviously, there are some platforms where I prefer the CLI, but when the GUI is good, I'll take it any day over a CLI. It's just easier to do the things that you need to actually do. Just because there's a GUI doesn't mean going back to, you need to know OSPF. Just because you have a GUI where you can click a checkbox instead of typing in rather OSPF1 doesn't mean you stop knowing OSPF, right? It's just, I don't get the hate for GUIs personally.
Yep, yeah. And there's some cases like the new all the modern firewalls were all web driven for the most part, like Cisco Secure Firewall, which if we ever get to demos, I'll get to that eventually, or there's Palo Alto. Like, all these guys, like, you're going to need to use some form of GUI, and there is some frustration with that, believe me, but especially when you get to which browser works with what tool. But it's just learn it properly and move on, especially something when Cisco's asking you something so small. So like in the new version, if they add a bunch of DNAC tasks there, then we can have more of a conversation about it. But like right now, I mean, you can logically infer where you're clicking in the WLC GUI. Like when it gets to 9800, if they do that, it's going to be less logical because it's more bundled configuration and templates and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay, good. Move on to another question. I think I can answer this one. How can I prepare 100% with free CCNA resources? I live in a third world country, and free means a lot to me.
So if you sign up for INE, we'll give you a free
you can get a free trial.
We have a 7-day free trial over at CBT Nuggets.
Yeah.
Okay, next
plug your stuff. So I, of course, have a free CCNA course. I mean, you know that if you're watching the stream. So in terms of video course, that would be sufficient, I think, as a free option. I also recommend using a book. Now, books for free is kind of difficult. I do know. Are you guys familiar with Paul Browning?
I actually have a storied history with him.
Okay, we won't get into that.
We won't get into that.
He released a book for free. I haven't read through it. I can't say if it's great or not good or so. But I'll just put the link in the chat. It's a free CCNA book online. I mean, if purchasing stuff is hard for you, take a look at it. It might help.
Though I will say that, especially in IT and these kind of things, like you get what you pay for. Like someone like Jeremy is doing a lot of great charity work and building free stuff there. But for every Jeremy, there's like a Kelvin YouTube channel where I just right. So
or worse, the Packet Thrower channel.
But yeah, so I mean, just it's hard when you're a junior because you don't have an eye for quality.
Yeah.
So what I'll just suggest is, if you're gonna do that kind of stuff, offset it by like participating in these communities, like Jeremy's Discord or Chuck's Discord or Keith Barker's or one of these guys. Ironically, we're in all of them, all three of us. But like Cisco Study Group, whatever it is, just make sure you're there and be an active participant there, and it can help. If nothing else, will help you learn stuff. And if you read a book and someone says that, hey, OSPF uses 120 as an AD, and you don't know any better, that can cause you points in the exam. But if you mention it, we'll go like, no, it's 110 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's better to offset those kind of things as much as possible. And paid resources, they're not perfect necessarily. They at least have the air of quality in the sense that someone should have experience, like someone's money is on the line there. Like you can get a refund or bad reviews or whatnot if things are bad there. So
yeah, if you think OSPF's AD is 120, rip.
Oh.
Okay, yeah.
Got him.
Yeah, he mentioned the Discord servers. I would also add to that for sure. The Discord servers, it's always people asking questions, helping each other out. Yeah, I think it's a great resource to make sure what you're learning is correct and your understanding is correct. If you have a question like, hey, is my understanding of how this works correct? We'll look at it. We'll help you out. So definitely join the Discord servers. Okay, we got another super chat, $4.99 from Tasmanian 4000. The question is, do you think SonicWall can replace Cisco ASA? And then a second one. This is 2 parts. Second question is, what is your opinion about UniFi switches and routers? So that's 2 questions.
I think I answered the first one.
Okay, so you're not a fan of SonicWall.
Oh dear God! I'm really biting my tongue here.
I've used one of their firewalls once. I think I'm still not recovered yet.
I've noticed.
I mean, okay, when you're comparing it to the ASA, that's a different discussion. When you're comparing it to the ASA, but if you're comparing it to any reasonably modern firewall, no, not even close.
Yeah. If they're to be kind to them, if you're a small business and you're like D-Link and that kind of stuff, like he was saying, then okay, fine. SonicWall is better than the home grade stuff there, but not much better. What's the second part? Is like unified something?
Yeah. What is your opinion about UniFi switches and routers? What do you think about UniFi?
Oh.
Now I can take a few different things there. Now I'm going to assume he means a router with a switch module in it, or
UniFi Ubiquity.
Oh, I heard unified. Okay.
No. I think UniFi, right? Ubiquity. UNIFI.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's a completely different question. So I have some Unity switches here. My because I'm not a Cisco partner anymore. I couldn't keep my Meraki licenses.
Mickey Mouse can't get you a Cisco partnership.
What's the? No, I can't. Basically, anyway, I switched to Ubiquity, and I got their Pro switches, and they're okay. Frankly, I'm a little bit underwhelmed, but I'm more of a power user. I find their what is it? The cloud key is a little bit clunky and whatnot. But if you're a lower tier network there, like a small business, maybe up to like SMB kind of level, there's worse options out there. The routers, the Edge router is actually really good, but they kind of discontinued it, I think.
Yeah, the edge router is good because it runs Viana, or it runs a BIOS derivative.
Yeah, and you had the Dream Machine Pro,
Yeah,
right?
I have. So I'm running the Dream Machine SE, which is the step up from the Pro. Um, I have mixed thoughts about it. I like it from a platform perspective. I like it in terms of the GUI is pretty intuitive. The new one is, at least. The old one I'm not a fan of. But the new GUI is pretty good. You have some level of control now. It is an SMB product, so you have to keep that in mind. You're not going to get, heck, you don't even get dynamic routing support on it. You don't get to run your BGP or OSPF there, but if you're running in a fairly simple environment, that's all right. Honestly, if you're looking at the Unify Dream Machine SE feature set and you're going, okay, yeah, nothing's missing from here that I would significantly miss, then yeah, it's a pretty good platform. My only gripe about it is my ISP doesn't do IPv6 natively. And v6 tunneling on that platform sucks in terms of the performance there, because you have to do it via some Linux networking hackery there, and the performance just doesn't end up being where it needs to be. So that's a fairly edge case. I can't hold that against the Dream Machine. So again, if the feature set looks good to you, it's a pretty good platform.
Yeah, I'll say it's pretty good, but by the time you go all in, if this is a business there, you might want to consider looking at something like Meraki or something like Juniper's offering, or even like Fortinet switching, whatever your overall platform is, because honestly, you're probably not saving as much money as you think you are.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, their switches can be pricey.
Ubiquity?
Ubiquity switches can be pricey.
Okay, this one's a comment, again from Razvan. I think this is in reference to him not liking GUI questions. Says, I'll move on once I've sat the exam. Okay, so he still hasn't moved on. Not a fan of GUIs, but
okay,
what can you do? You got to learn it. All right, we got $5 from Robert Miller. I've been a collaboration engineer for many years, since Tandberg days. I'm not sure what that means, but he says he's never needed a cert. Should he go for CCNA first or skip to CCNP collab? So he's not a beginner. He has years of experience. What do you think?
So this is, I guess, it depends on what his actual goal is, right?
Yeah.
So if he just wants to prove he's current in collaboration, I think he said did you say he was since 10x, or did you say something else?
It says Tandberg. Tandberg.
Oh, Tandberg. So Tandberg is the how their old video conferencing stuff there, and also they have something called an expressway, which is kind of like how do I describe? It's like a proxy that people can use to connect when they're remotely and that kind of thing. So anyway, fair enough. I would say I would recommend doing the CCNA, and this kind of comes up a lot there, but for one, it's just good to see, like, I'm sure your resume can go one to two ways. One is you're a pure collaboration engineer and you don't have any other skills and it's just there, or maybe you're more varied. But I would say the CCNA, especially if you can get work to pay for, it's a no-brainer. It just shows that your fundamentals are good, and if I'm interviewing you there, then at least it's not going to be a question of why don't you have a CCNA? Does that mean you don't know OSPF, that kind of thing? And then the CSP collaboration stuff. I would just say that the new exams are beast compared to the old ones. Calvin and I did a lot of the professional and
oh yeah, that was a fun story.
Yeah, but so I would just say that be prepared. Make sure that you're there's knowing how to configure something because you worked on it for 10 years, and there's like actually knowing like how SPFs gets on the line. So you might be able to configure like an expressway while sleeping and before your first coffee, and that's perfectly cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you know what all the options do. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but there's more to the exam than the Tandberg.
So I will preface my part of the response here by saying that collab is not my strong suit. Not compared to.
I know you're doing terrible tonight.
Did you get a Cisco phone recently?
I'm building out a UC lab. I'm trying to improve on that side of my repertoire there, but I will preface what I'm about to say by I am not an experienced UC engineer. What I will say is that, as far as certs go, my general recommendation, and this applies outside of UC too, as far as, should I skip the CCNA? Should I just go straight for the CCNP? Because it's a bit of a hot topic question there. The 99.999% of people should go for their CCNA first. It's that edge case, where it's like, I've had my CCNA for years. I've been working in a senior network architect role for years, and I just want to, move up. And, fair enough, right? If you want to skip the CCNA there, I don't blame you. Nice.
Donald's off the phone.
I just took my 8845 out of the room. I could have joined in the party there, but so when it comes to your NP collab there, if you want to go for your CCNA just for that completeness, fair enough. If you look at the CCNP collab, and that's my recommendation to you, go take a look at the CL core exam topics. Take a look at the CL ACCM, the Advanced Call Control Mobility exam. Go take a look at those exam topics and figure out, looking at these exam topics, in a objective, as objective as you can be way, do I meet these objectives? If the answer is yes, then I don't blame you for skipping the CCNA, particularly if your work isn't paying for it. If your work is paying for it and it's like a week kind of adventure for you, then go for it. I don't blame you for skipping it, though. That's my take on it.
Yeah, go either way, and we need more information. But long story short, just look at the topics like CCNA in particular for collaboration. You have the voice VLAN, you have the basic routing there for communication, and you have the QoS topics. So it really just depends on what exactly you do. If you're the guy who sets up the QoS one up, then probably fine. If you're the guy who just pass it on to the network guy to do it, then maybe consider it.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Good answers. Of course, it depends on your exact situation, but it seems like you are a possible candidate for skipping the CCNA, but that's really up to your experience.
Assess yourself objectively is my advice.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we have a very generous super chat, $100 from Griffin for the win. He signed it, I think pronounced Geo, G-H-E-O. He's in the Discord. I think he got a CCNA.
Oh, him.
Him. Yeah. I know you. I know that guy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The guy who's a big fan of Catherine McNamara.
Okay. I wasn't there for that conversation, but okay, let's read the question. He says, I'm a sophomore in college working as a SOC analyst for a couple months now. I was a network admin and loved it. I want to go back to networking. I have my CCNA, but my question is overall, what do you suggest I do? And second part, he says, also, does the NCORE exam overlap with NRC?
I'll answer the second one first.
Sure, yeah, second one's easier.
Yes, it absolutely does. The core exam of any CCNP, whether it's enterprise security, whatever the case may be, the point is that it takes the core topics from your concentrations and then wraps into one exam. So everyone takes that exam, everyone understands those core topics, and then you dive in with your concentration. I actually
recommend doing the other way around.
Yes, concentration and core. I didn't realize we agreed on that, but we do apparently. As far as the first question goes, if you want to get back into networking, the CCNA is enough to get back into networking, depending on what type of role.
If you have something on your resume.
Yeah.
The thing about and we'll probably talk about before we wrap up tonight at one point or another is when you go beyond the CCNA, you have to start considering what resume or what story your resume is telling, and what you're actually backing up there. So it's all well and good to take like a Juniper search, and you can. But if you don't actually work on Juniper, then it's just going to become one attack vector on the interview there, because I could say Juniper and start throwing a bunch of stuff on there, whether or not I use it for the job or not. And two, it's just another thing for you to maintain that kind of stuff there. And when I read your resume, it's like, okay, well, what does Bob want to do? Does he want to work in? I see he's in security. I see he's in networking, and he's doing a firewall search, so he's going that direction. I want someone in this direction. You just gotta start thinking about where your what you're presenting to people when you apply for jobs and that kind of thing. But
yeah, think about what kind of position you want and what kind of skills and certs they're asking for on those
yeah, like if
projects.
you randomly take like I don't know, Azure desktop cert or something like that there, or mobile management or one of those certs, and it's like
Intune, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, are you trying to get into help desk? Like, so it's sometimes you raise your eyebrows. I was like, okay, what's this guy doing? Especially when there's not enough experience to justify anything. But anyway, long story short, CCNA is probably fine to get a knock job again, especially if you are trying to go back to your previous job, unless you burned a bridge or two. But you can, with your background and whatnot, justify starting CCNP study. So you can work on the NRC or at least whatever you want to do as a concentration. And then if you pass any exam, Cisco is giving you a cert now, so you'll be a Cisco specialist.
Yep.
And that bumps up your CCNA in turn.
Yeah, and that renews you and stuff too. So it's a little bit better than it was before, because like if you want to do something like the data center track, you had to pass like 5 exams or something.
Yeah. Four. The max was 4.
Yeah. I think collab was 5. One of them was 5. But
I thought UC was 4.
Okay. We'll just say it doesn't matter.
Okay. Old news.
But at least until August. But anyway, I lost my train of thought there utterly. Thanks, Calvin. But I'm just trying to say that you can start studying if you want to, because you have some network background, you have some security background. So if I would just say you can work towards that. Just be careful. Like if you jump straight into CCP security, 1, that's a bad idea, because CCP enterprise should be your foundation. But 2, you kind of says to me, like, okay, you want to work on firewalls, and maybe that's going to cut you out of a knock job that I might give to you, might have gave you a shot for otherwise.
Yeah. I'll echo off that. Just consider where you're going. That's a nice little bundled summary of what Don spent 2 minutes trying to say.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you distracted me.
Wow.
Okay, so thanks again for that very generous super chat, and see you in the Discord server.
Heck yeah.
Okay, so do you guys want to talk a little bit about VTP? We mentioned earlier that we might discuss VTP, and you said Odom hates VTP. So
I don't know why it started blowing up, but every day I go on your Discord,
I guess it's just a real VTP bomb, eh?
Yeah. So should people use VTP? Is it dangerous?
All right. So here's my thing about it, and we'll see what Calvin thinks. I think we're probably pretty close here. So Odom and like Keith Barker and these older kind of trainers, they hate VTP with passion there. So when you like read Odom's chapter on VTP, there he's basically like, never. This is how you turn it off and leave it off, and it's like, okay, that's fine, but what everyone's missing is that it has a purpose, especially in smaller networks, because if you don't have a VLAN defined on a downstream switch, it's just going to drop all your traffic, right? And so everyone says, okay, well, you can automate it, but most of those smaller companies are nowhere near mature enough to have automation. So now you're like, if you had something like Prime Infrastructure or SolarWinds is kind of dead now, but something like their NCAM or DNA Center, like, sure, you can not use VTP and you can push it out there. And sort of like data center environments, you just wouldn't, you don't want layer 2 to begin with, but that's a different conversation. But anyway, I just feel it gets an unfair rap, and you would find that there's no real numbers on this, but I would say 70 to 80% small to medium businesses are running VTP there just for the convenience, and the larger companies is probably somewhere around 40%, but it's not unheard of in those kind of environments. And all the problems I've been complaining about, they've been solved for like 15 years, man. Like ever since iOS 15 came out, VTP version 3 is being standard on all devices. Like you used to be able to only be able to turn on a CAT 6400, or is it 6500?
65, yeah.
But yeah, since iOS 15 has been solved, so there's really no reason to bash it. But Cisco's not doing themselves any favors, because they're not adding VTP version 3 on the exam because they don't want to teach multiple spanning tree in the CCNA, because VTP version 3 can also sync or MST instances. And they don't want to say like, oh, by the way, and add the small little bike. So they want to cover it properly there. So they're kind of in a weird logic where they're teaching the worst version, but
yeah, maybe they'll add it in the next version. My take is, like Don said, pretty similar. My thing is, I get the rap against V1 and V2. Like, I get it. You know, for the technical context, for those of you who are still studying VTP, the idea behind hating VTP is that if you are careless and you buy a random switch off of eBay that has config properly wiped, the idea is that if that configuration revision number in the VLAN database is higher than what you already have in your network, even if it's a client, if you plug it in and have a trunk set up, it'll push that empty VLAN database to all your devices and wipe out all your VLANs. That's the traditional problem. And on V1 and V2, it is an absolute unmitigated disaster. If you're careless. Now, a lot of features you can mess yourself up if you're careless, right? So, the blame there isn't, is 60 VTP, 40 you being careless, right? But VTP v3, there's really nothing to hate because that's not a problem anymore. The device that pushes that VLAN database, well, you're not defining that based on revision number anymore. You're defining that based on who's the primary server. Well, how do you decide who's the primary server? You go on the CLI and you type VTP primary. So if you
have to protect it, so it's
So if you end up having a primary server that pushes the wrong VLAN database, well, that's not VTP's fault anymore. That's 100% on you. So I don't think, the broader point is that I don't think VTP deserves the hate. I think if you focus the hate on VTP V1 and V2, fair enough, because you should absolutely be using V3. But to say VTP as a whole, don't use it, right? I think is, I will kindly use the word misguided.
Okay. Yeah. And as for a CCNA candidate, VTP isn't explicitly mentioned like VTP on the CCNA exam topics list. But do you think it's something a CCNA candidate should study?
So there's some interesting verbiage in the exam topic.
Yeah.
And that verbiage is something along the lines of...
I have it pulled up here, actually.
You can read it.
Funnily enough, where is it?
Should be at the top.
2.2, configure and verify interswitch connectivity, trunk ports, configure and verify.
I mean, the very top of the exam where they explain.
It says the following topics are general guidelines.
That
likely to be included on the exam. However, other related topics may also appear on any specific delivery of the exam.
And what's related to trunking?
VTP
is related to trunking.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a gray area. It's now saying that I wouldn't expect like 50 questions on VTP, but you should be aware of it. And the reality is that the industry and the exams are not usually in sync for quite a while. So that means that if I took the CCNA 10 years ago, let's just say, and I know that everyone should know VTP, that's more on you to, like if I ask what is VTP because I'm using my network there, and you go, well, it's not the CCNA. Well,
that's not an answer.
Yeah, that's not an answer, right? So you should be aware of any updates going forward. And likewise, when the August update comes out, if they add, I don't know, IS to IS for some reason, then you'll want to at least be a little bit aware of it there, because eventually the workplace is going to start asking like, okay, well, CCNA should know this, that kind of thing.
Yep. Okay, good. I think that's good coverage of VTP.
Sure.
We got another super chat again from Tasmanian 4000, $5. Thank you very much. He asks,
well, that's all $10 from him?
He's asked, why do ISPs prefer Juniper devices instead of Cisco devices?
Well, that's a complicated question.
Juniper does very well in the high-grade routing market. That's kind of where they make their red because it certainly isn't with the SRX. I can tell you that much. The high-grade, high-performance routing market is kind of where they shine there. There
Oh
you
yeah, we
go.
got a JNCIE, recent expert of Juniper, Donald Robb.
There you go. Yeah.
Congrats on it, by
Actually,
the way.
send me another one there. Like they sent me a bigger one. I don't know why, but I'll take it.
Is it smaller or bigger than the CCIE plaque? You know?
I'll find out when I get around to it. I'd ask you, but I mean, you have to pass it.
Oh, ow!
So for you guys who aren't aware, the JNCIE is Juniper's equivalent of the CCIE. It's their expert level certification, and Donald got it, I think, a month ago or a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
November.
Nice. Congrats.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Anyway, I cut you off with my showboating.
Oh no, go ahead.
All right, so that's a complicated question, and it really depends on a few different factors. One is some ISPs have a mandate there that they have to use multiple vendors because they want to be able to force negotiation and get around supply chain issues, and so they'll basically say, by no matter what, we're using Cisco and Juniper and Nokia, that kind of thing. Two is that Juniper is really good at when you get into the more complicated things like route policies and BGP and a lot of routes which ISPs have. They are pretty good boxes. Cisco also has their pretty big boxes too there, and Nokia is the other player in that market.
ASRs in the Cisco world.
Yeah, so it's not better and necessarily, and it's not worse, and preferred is kind of relative there. There are Cisco only ISPs, there are Juniper only ISPs. Certain regions will use Huawei there because geopolitics. So it's just depends on what your perception is, but you shouldn't just say, hey, I'm going to write off this vendor, or I'm going to do that. Like, if anything, you should, once you learn Cisco and you get branched out to like CCP level, you should start looking at like one other vendor so you can see the two different ways of handling the configuration. And then from there, you can pretty much infer anything else.
You know, I just thought of an analogy. You know, Juniper is like a jackhammer, you know, or a chainsaw or some other sort of, you know, heavy duty tool. When you try to configure the simple stuff on Juniper, it'll drive you insane. Like an IP address configuration requires an essay. You know, but when you get into, you know, the route policies, the more complicated stuff, it starts to make sense. It starts to, you know, come together for you there. But some of the simple stuff there, you know, LACP will drive you absolutely fucking nuts. I probably shouldn't have cursed there. This one is.
We're an hour and a half.
You're gonna need more super chats.
Yeah, gonna have to fund Jeremy's. You know, that I should have a swear jar here. Just pop $1 in there for in memory of Jeremy's monetization. But you know, yeah. So in terms of I'll echo what Don said there. Vendor discussions are complicated. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You're not picking a vendor because you're a Cisco fanboy, you're a Juniper fanboy, if there are any Juniper fanboys out there. You know, it's all about what tool fits the job the best.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, good stuff. Here's an interesting one. I mean, if you read the news a couple of years ago, you'd know, but why is SolarWinds dead? Did something happen there?
Did they get compromised on?
Yeah, they had
so essentially what happened is hackers got into their local repository where they pushed the code, and basically they managed to corrupt whatever file, and basically as they distributed new versions after that point, it basically had like a what is the word, command and control that caused some issues. And so anyway, a lot of vendors are companies are dropping Juniper, and they're
dropping SolarWinds.
Oh yeah, sorry. You know, dropping.
I mean,
whatever.
I don't think your JNCIE buddies would be very happy with that that mistake there.
Yeah, well, we'll edit it out. We'll do it live. But yeah, so anyway, they got into the distribution system and no one noticed, and basically they used SolarWinds as like an attack vector when they pushed out new patches and whatnot, and basically it shattered customer trust and went from there.
Yep, yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, so one of my last
SolarWinds will survive on their GNS3 business. I actually didn't know until Brian told me that SolarWinds owns GNS3.
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense why they have those partnerships.
I thought they just had. I thought SolarWinds just sponsored them. I didn't realize it was outright ownership until Brian told me.
Yeah, but I'm sure they'll be fine one way or another. But yeah, like one of my last consulting gigs I did before I moved on to the mouse is that I did a bake-off between various solutions to get off SolarWinds, and it was a very complicated and proactive project there, just because SolarWinds, the reason why they were so popular is they made a lot of things easy to implement, and they had a lot of things there, and the industry hasn't really caught up in the sense of, hey, here's the one solution that does all the things for everyone. So you end up doing like, hey, this is the monitoring tool, this is the configuration tool, this is this and that, and it's a little bit more messy at the moment. So eventually someone like Cisco or some other vendor is going to come in and take over that space, but it's kind of open right now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. We have another question, a clarification, something you guys mentioned earlier. You guys recommend NRC before NCore, and why is that?
Go for it.
Okay. The idea, my logic behind going concentration and then core is that with the concentration, you're diving, right in.
How can you pass without concentrating?
Sorry?
How can you pass without concentrating?
It's the core of the question. Yeah, I can dish one too, Donald. No, but in all seriousness, I think the fact that the concentration dives deep into one specific study focus in that track makes it easier to get started. Ironically, you might think, oh, well, it gets into too much detail. I should go core first, because that's not giving me a good view of everything. But the people saying that are not. I think that argument doesn't consider the fact that the Encore exam is absolutely freaking massive. I didn't curse this time. Absolutely massive. You
can't forget that the core exams are the CCNA qualifier.
Yeah, they are very, very wide. And so starting off with the concentration, I think, makes it a lot easier, especially because, like, with the NRC, for example, you dive right into OSPF, EIGRP, BGP. It makes it easier to just fire stuff up in the lab. The Encore, by comparison, has a lot of describing.
Yeah, it's like, hey, here's SD-WAN, here's Terraform, here's what else am I thinking of? Anyway, a bunch of monitoring stuff.
And then my last point there, I'll pass over to Don in a moment. Sure. But my last point there, going off of one of his points there, is that because you have, because you're diving in so deep with the concentration, you can then take that knowledge that you get from the concentration and use it to help you get through the core exam, because it gives you context. Like, oh, SD-WAN, OMP. Well, I can kind of compare this to some of the more traditional routing protocols I've studied in the NRC exam. So that knowledge will help you carry your way through the Encore exam. I'll pan off to you, Donald.
Yeah, let's give 2 points to that. One is that while the NRC is the common concentration exam we like to recommend, it's not the only one. There's 5 or 6 options that focus on different things. So there's design, there's if you want SD-WAN, there's one. If you want automation, there's another one. So just keep that in mind there. So if you're actually someone who works with SD-WAN, you should maybe take an inventory of yourself and see, like, does it make sense to do this, and what do I want to do, or do I want to do a wireless exam, that kind of thing. And 2 is, I'll just say that you should be studying like the TOG core and the concentration relatively closely together, because there's a lot of interwoven topics there. So it's not so clean that you can say, I'm just going to do the NRC and then do the core. You can do that. It's just you're going to be there might be some interesting gaps there, because the CCNP does not hold your hand. It's like, you're a professional, I'll prove it. And so it's kind of an interesting experience, but I would say it takes about 5-6 months per exam to want to pass, give or take. You might be able to say like concentration is more like 3 months, but it just depends on what you are and that's how much overlap you want to do.
And one point to piggyback off of one point Donald made there is that if you do end up taking that inventory yourself and going, yeah, okay, I work with SD-WAN a lot. My role is SD-WAN centric. I'm gonna take the SD-WAN concentration. Good for you. But remember that when you put that cert on your resume, what are you putting it as? CCNP Enterprise. You're not putting it as CCNP Enterprise with an SD-WAN. Maybe you are, but regardless of what you put it as, you're getting examined as a CCNP Enterprise. So
you're still expected to know, and that's why it's so wide.
If an interviewer asks you, what's an OSPF NSSA, your response cannot be, oh, I took the SD-WAN concentration, right? Like we mentioned earlier with one of the other questions there. Yeah. Saying that, oh, I did an older version of the cert, or I did a different concentration exam, that's not an answer to a question. So even if you do another concentration, I would still say make sure that you have familiarized yourself with the fundamental NRC concepts to get the depth that you would need to pass it, even if you don't officially take it.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Let me get to another question. This one I got on Discord. Well, we kind of covered this, but he says, can you tell us a bit more about what will happen once the new CCNA guidelines are published? How long before the new exam is published, and the implication for students that are studying for the current exam?
It's basically 3 months, and then it comes over. So I think it's like April or whatever.
Yeah, so the way they do it is they do it in fiscal quarters. It threw me off a little bit at first because Cisco starts their fiscal year in August. I kind of wish they had just ignored that and then started it for the public in January, because we are not their financial accountants. But it's what it is, right? So what they're doing is they're releasing it in the updates. They are announcing them in Q4 of 2023, which for them is May to July. And then they are actually publishing the updated exam in Q1 of 24, which is August to November of this year. Again, makes no sense to me that they're saying it's Q1 of 2024 when literally none of those months are in 2024.
Well, it's basically, it's how the BUs or business units are funded.
Fair enough. Yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, so the point is that they do the exam announcement in one quarter, and then they actually update the exam in the next. So you have about a fiscal quarter's worth of time. Before.
Now there is one interesting caveat: is they're not changing the exam numbers this time. So there will be an interesting conversation that I'm looking forward to having with a random person on Discord, where they bought like the old 301 book there, and then we have to tell them, like, no, that's not the right one. You need the
other 301.
The V1.1 book, the second edition.
Did they actually announce they're not changing the exam?
Really? The new collaboration exam is 350. I think it's 801 V1.1, which is insane.
Because I think what they're doing is they're setting the stage for more rapid updates. So I think there'll be like a yearly thing where, like, after they get a few more of the bits and pieces out, assuming I'm right, but they'll basically say, like, okay, well, we're just gonna, every time DNA Center updates, we're gonna refresh those topics or that kind of thing. Maybe not. That's
maybe not so rapidly.
But some kind of like every quarter we'll just update to whatever the gold star is or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And what should someone studying for the current CCNA do?
Panic and run.
Keep studying.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
But
panic and run away from
get an art degree.
Channel.
Yeah. The only thing you can do now is study for the current version, because we don't know what's going to be on the new one.
I mean, I typically say on average, it is about 5 months of study from beginning to end to be able to pass the CCNA. So if you look at the calendar, that is basically till the end of February is basically when you start chipping away at that and start saying, okay, I recommend 5 months, not 4 months, and that kind of thing. So you're still in a comfortable area. So just keep moving forward if you're working through it there. And then, don't panic. I mean, from what I've seen, it's not going to be a paradigm shift. So, and anything they add, unless it goes completely off the walls or something, they're not going to go too crazy with the exam updates. So, and what they do change will be beneficial, give or take. So It's not a bad thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty much.
Okay. We got another super chat. £5
$200.
British pounds.
Ooh.
About $200, 200 Canadian dollars. Says, what are your
2,000
thoughts?
Canadian.
What are your thoughts on using Cisco in a home network? I currently run an ASR 9904 in my core.
What?
And he says, oh, and Geck says, hey, TPT.
What is your power bill, sir?
Yeah, that was the question that popped in my mind too. ASR 9904 in a core. That's in a home network core. It's funny because all of my internet traffic passes through a Catalyst 3560. So if I say no to using Cisco in your home network, I'm kind of a hypocrite there. But like in all seriousness, the reality is you don't want to overcomplicate your home network. This is one of the discussions I have more often than I would like to, with people who hop on various Discords, various online communities, and go, "Hey, I want to do this with my home network. I want like 6,000 VLANs and run OSPF everywhere and redistribute." And it's like, my dude, it's your home network. If you're the example Don always uses is if you cut off Netflix for your wife because you or your significant other because you accidentally wiped all your VLANs by plugging in a BTP v2 client with a higher revision number, right? Your wife's not, or your SO is not going to be very happy with you. And so my advice is always keep your home network stupid simple. If you want to have a physical lab to play around with, fine. Keep that separated. Run a VPN between the two ends if you want to access it from your home network, whatever the case may be. But don't lab on your production network, because the other side of the coin there, besides not wanting to piss off your SO, is if you're working as a network engineer, you don't want to come home and not be able to watch YouTube unless you do more network engineering work.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating.
Yeah.
When you come from a long days home and something's not working and you got to fix it because the family wants to chill, or worse, you're working remotely or something and you can't,
then it breaks
because you broke it, and
you got a meeting with the client or something.
So I mean, keep it nice and simple. Like we show actually I've shared it in screens tonight, but we have like our Eve and our CML and that kind of stuff, whatever your tool is. And we have our physical islands here, like just out of my camera view, I have a bunch of switches and stuff that I could turn on and off if I need to. And my basement has a bunch of stuff in it too for similar things. And you can work, you can do whatever you want to do, but just say, make sure that your main functionality is
is resilient to your lab screw-ups.
And also just gives you freedom to be more crazy in the lab, right? So if you have to be careful that you're not causing a loop and taking down your house, then that's one thing. But if you have like your own isolated switches there and you can do whatever you want, then you can have more focused lab fun there. Because I find if you run production gear in your house there, you basically get it so it's working, and then you just very rarely
you just never touch it again. Yeah.
And when you do touch it, there's a risk of
I mean, if you want that real world feel, I kind of get it, but it's just not worth it, man.
Yeah, and you get into things like license, like performance licensing. Like you don't have to care about your the performance that you're pushing through routers in your lab. But then if you're using Route 1 as an internet edge and your NAT performance is 100 megabit a second because you bought a 2900 off of eBay, that then you're getting into the territory of not being very, it's fun to set it up, and then when you try to use it, it's not very fun. So
like Calvin said earlier, real equipment has real problems. So I mean, the stuff on eBay, it's like 20 years old sometimes. It can just die. It can just be like, hey, it can only actually pass like 50 megs of traffic because it's a mid-tier,
because it's an old branch router,
or it doesn't have, the eBay doesn't have the proper licensing, and then you're kind of hooped in that regard. It's so just keep it simple and keep it focused, and that's probably the best way to handle that particular switching. But I want to know your power on the
on the ASR
9K bill. Curious.
That'd be funny.
I think that's reasonable advice. Keep the home network simple, and if you want to play with real more advanced hardware, make a separate lab. Do it. Okay, we got another very generous super chat. Again from Geo in the Discord. $50. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Appreciate it.
You need to work for a sock. He's made me money.
Yeah. He says, quick question. Isn't the CCNP being updated as well?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
I don't know the timeline. For that,
Different
for sure.
timeline. There. Actually, I think it is in August. Or no, is that Service Provider? One of the
Service Provider and CCNA are tied together. Security and Enterprise are getting their updates. Oh, actually, this quarter. So we're going to see the Security and Enterprise updates real soon. It's in their range is between February and April of 2023. So next quarter, my bad.
Yeah, so we might be in an interesting situation where we'll be informed by the CCNP Enterprise updates. For how we're going to shape our CCNA opinions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was more to that. More comments.
Sorry, just one thing real quick. I'll
sure.
send the certification roadmaps link in the YouTube chat there.
Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, he had that quick question about CCNP being updated. He also said, "I love how you guys bash each other all the time. Yeah, it's good fun. Here is to more CCNA CCNP content. Also, this dono was for Kelvin's swear jar money." P.S. I love Catherine.
All right, Jeremy, I use Venmo.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, we got a question from someone who is 36 years old, and he says, I'm following your CCNA course for a career change. Is that possible? At 36 years old, can you change careers into IT? What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. There's no problem with that.
I've seen older people try.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's no real I know people like to throw away isms and whatnot there. Like this would be like ageism, but it isn't really real. I mean, if you were like older and like in the industry and like you wanted to like become a consultant or something towards the end, I'd be a little bit more concerned because you got old dogs, new tricks, that kind of thing. But if you're just starting out there's no real pedigree against that. And ironically,
I think the only requirement there is that your bones have skin over them. I think that's our only requirement, right?
Yeah, I mean, so as long as you can keep up and whatnot, no one really cares. There's a wide range of ages and all that kind of stuff there. And no, I mean, that might mean that you might not be the guy who's like racking switches all day or something like that, because you might have, well, 36 is, I mean, I'm 37. What am I doing? But I'm saying if like you're 50
ancient,
or something,
Don, ancient.
Like if you're like 50 or something, then there might be some more, depending on the role, there might be some more practical conversations. But at my old job, I was shocked to find out that my remote resource for a data center tech was 75 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just never saw him in person, so I was always talking on the phone, and I was like, "Oh, he's retiring." He's like, "What?" He's like, "It's 75." I was like, so anyway, you can do quite well as long as you're, put the initiative in. It's not. Now, I will give one caveat: is that what you make in your current career or whatnot. Let's just say you're a marketing executive. You want to try that there, and you're used to, I don't know, $500,000 a year because you're a great marketing executive. Then when you're talking to the IT industry, we're not going to go, okay, well, you're a marketing executive, so you're joining a knock of $500,000. That's not happening. You're joining whatever the real thing is. Like, you're essentially starting to zero on our scale, right? So if you're used to certain money, or you need it for your family or that kind of thing, you may need to have some exploratory conversations before you sign the offer and whatnot. Or you might need to, do like what everyone else does when they need it, like secondary jobs or side things or that kind of, but aside from that, there's no real pedigree or anything against it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good enough. Fair enough. We have a question. What other certification can be taken as equivalent to CCNA? Is there anything?
Nothing equivalent to the CCNA.
Nothing. Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're asking, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
so like if you're, for the most part, if you are, or if you know you're going to work for like the knock next to you is Juniper only, and they uh don't care about the CCNA, and you like those guys, like okay, fine, you can work towards your JNCIS, which would be the equivalent to the CCNA, give or take.
Mhm.
Or if they use some other vendor, like they're an HP or Aruba shop or something, then fine. But for the most part, the CCNA is the de facto cert for juniors, so it's a really safe bet. But if you're like, you have a way to go directly to cloud, which is super rare, but I mean, sure, you can do that there.
Yeah,
You have those contacts, whatnot, but that's hard.
really just depends on where you're trying to go. Yeah. I will say I've been thinking, as long as Donald talked there, so probably 2 hours. I can't, from a technical depth perspective, so I'm looking at this from a cert perspective, nothing at the CCNA's level, nothing beats it. The JNCIA, the problem with the JNCIA there is that they assume your fundamentals and then they jump really far into things like routing policies, and then they'll ask you like, how do you configure a user on the router, right? Like, that's the problem with the JNCIA. No networking focused associate cert comes close to how well rounded the CCNA is, and how practical.
CCNA, not CCIE.
Did I say CCIE?
I heard it.
Check your hearing there, bud. I mean, you're 37, might be coming up, but no, yeah, nothing associate level out there beats the CCNA.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. In terms of like general acceptedness and value on a resume for a beginner, CCNA is by far.
Yeah, I mean, with a CCNA, you can safely or relatively safely apply for pretty much any junior job. Like even at like systems from inside and that kind of thing. They're like usually entry level jobs are just happy to see you have any cert. So you can't go too wrong there, but if you find one that's universally recognized or whatnot, that's fine. Like a cert doesn't help you if I don't know what it is, right? So if you pick, if Kelvin makes a Kelvin certified CBT Nugget subscriber associate or whatever, and he awards it randomly to I don't know, the phase in our Discord, then it's like, okay, that's great, but I don't know what that is. I don't know what it took to got it. I don't know the thing. I'm not even gonna. I mean, if we're in an interview, I might ask you about it, but that's assuming I pick you to go for an interview. So anyway, just be careful. Make sure. I mean, there's a lot of marketing and stuff to play. You want to make sure that you have the most universally recognized certs and whatnot. But I mean, every vendor has their own version of a CCNA. It's just the trainings can be a lot less because if you go to like Aruba, like there's no CBT Nugget course on Aruba as far as I'm aware. Big words there, but and like for the most part, you have to buy books directly from Aruba Press and that kind of stuff there. Like you can't get them on Amazon, and like it gets harder and harder depending on what vendor you're talking about, and you're taking a gamble that the people care because you can get away with like one, maybe two certs as a junior without experience before it gets into paper cert territory, which is bad.
Yep. Okay. I think we'll move on. We got another comment from the guy who mentioned the ASA in his home network and his electrical bill.
ASR?
Yeah.
I think he said ASA. Right? ASR, okay. I don't remember. Well, whichever. He said it's very high. It's very high. He says 80 plus servers contribute heavily to it. Good old on-prem. So you have 80 plus servers at
80 rack servers. Let's be clear here. Do you mean 80 VMs or 80 rack servers?
I'm hoping not. I hope you don't have 80 plus servers at home.
So funny story.
Let's go.
Funny story. When I worked at one of the ISPs around here, I did a lot of what we call plant operations, which is like supporting the cable infrastructure and whatnot, and like the CMTS routers, that kind of stuff. And the field technicians, the top level of that was called a head end tech, which is a guy who works in the data center or the hub site is what we called it, to do it there. And the guy really wanted to be a head in tech there because he was working on one of the lower levels. And he bought like a bunch of like Motorola CMTS devices and all this other stuff there and set up in his basement. And the police raided his house there because they were convinced he was doing a grow up because he was using so much power relevant to everyone else in the area. So, be careful.
I guess the question Don is asking is, have you gotten a visit? And
if not, follow their orders, be calm.
Yeah, if you do actually have 80 plus servers at home, that's pretty impressive.
80 plus rack servers.
I'm not sure what you'd be doing with those, but
Jesus Christ!
Bitcoin,
what do they each have? Like 1 gig of RAM?
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Move on to another one. Oh, here's an interesting one. Is Packet Thrower the most certified guy he knows? Do you know anyone with more certs than you?
I think I'm pretty up there. I mean, we can go brass tacks with some other people, but I'm up there.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got certs or have had certs from like the vast majority of vendors, right?
Yeah.
So pretty wide breadth of experience there. Okay, we got another super chat. I'm not sure what currency this is. It's 100 of something. Thank you very much, Kaushik. He says, I am a commerce graduate. Can I do CCNA routing and switching? That's the point there. And then CCNP, and what's the scope? Yeah, what's the scope in present market for RNS? So first point, there is no CCNA routing and switching anymore.
Yeah, that's dead out of 2020.
Yeah, there's just CCNA. And then CCNP. Yes, I mean, yeah, you can do CCNA and then CCNP as a commerce graduate. My story is I studied music at university.
This isn't about you, Jeremy.
Really?
Yeah, so I studied music at university. Then I taught English in Japan for 5 years. And then I got CCNA and CCNP and entered network engineering.
So we expect a musical number by the end of this stream, Jeremy.
Okay, only if you do. Whip out the Stradivarius.
I actually don't have my violin with me right now. Okay. It's over at the other place there.
Yeah. So
sure.
That's my answer to that. Absolutely, as a commerce graduate, you can do CCNA and get into IT. No. That's no problem. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, just to close the loop on another thing too, is that the CCNA is actually very complete in terms of like you can buy a book or take a course and have a reasonable chance of passing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put the effort in, you can get the CCNA. It's definitely not insurmountable. There's other when you get into other vendors, they're like looking at you, Aruba, where they're like, here's the exam topics, and by the way, here's this entire other product line that's we're asking about, and for 10 questions, and that's nowhere to be seen in the book. $100 because you can only buy it from us.
I mean,
yes, you can.
Pretty sure Don started off as a construction worker, concrete worker, construction worker.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, cool. Look at Don. He kind of knows what he's doing.
Kind of.
Okay.
Let's do another one. Oh, we got a clarification. It was indeed 80 rack servers. He says, very warm garage.
Whoa. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm curious what you're doing with those 80 racks.
You know what? Everyone has their own life story. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting up 2 hours on here, so I think we'll wrap it up soon, but maybe just a couple more questions to wrap it up.
Don's bedtime is in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, what is it? Like so one question is about firewalls. Like, when should a network engineer or someone studying networking get into learning firewalls, and which should they study? Should they learn Palo Alto, Checkpoint, or?
Honestly, you can start learning firewalls when you need them in your job, and what firewall you learn is going to depend on what your job is using, because there's no real standardization in between the vendors. Like, they all have similar features, but they all do it wildly different ways, and they all have their own configuration quirks and different management platforms and all the different integrations and stuff. So
I mean, even the standard things like IPsec, well, that's a hairy forest when I start walking into it, right? And so certainly, yeah, your best bet as far as firewalling goes. Well, obviously, the CCNA will teach you the fundamentals of the role of a firewall.
Yeah, like an ACL, like a basic idea.
Like and if you do something like a CCNP enterprise, you're going to get into the zone-based firewall feature on the router, which is kind of a firewall. But in terms of actually learning a firewall platform, I agree that's something more of a when you need it kind of thing. And when you need it, you will know what firewall platform you want to learn, you need to learn. And
cloud, by the way, there I don't recommend learning cloud until you have to there. Like you don't want to just randomly pick Azure there and then your job needs AWS or Google or one of the other clouds, because there's similar features, completely different way of doing things. Everything has a different name. It's not going to help you a lot.
Yeah. Actually, that was a question I had written down. It's about cloud in general. Like, what is the role of cloud in someone's studies? Should they study it while they're studying CCNA or after, or when they get a job? Or...
No.
Not during the CCNA. It's just the concepts will some of your networking concepts will transfer over, right? Like if you're doing VNet in Azure, you're gonna have to know networking, right? If you're doing Express Route, you have to know networking. Equivalent concepts in AWS, obviously, you're gonna have to know networking. So concepts transfer over, but I agree with them. No, not during your CCNA. You've got enough to focus on building your fundamentals. You don't need to go tackle a bear.
Ideally, you want to be about CCNP level. Now, you don't actually have to be a CCNP, but you should be able to at least speak to the CCNP topics, or at least around there. Because when talking like what Express Route is, you're talking about BGP. You're talking about like Q&Q, which is
VPNs and all.
VPNs. You're talking about all kinds of concepts. You're talking about automation, and you're talking about like system and stuff, like understanding hypervisors. Like cloud is basically just a bunch of stuff glued together. And really you need to ease your way into it, and you don't want to put all that effort in and find out that your employer just doesn't care because your job doesn't include it. They have someone else for it there, or what have you. So and it's a lot there. Like there's something like 100+ servers on each cloud, or services on each cloud. They all have their own names, their own logics and whatnot. And your junior level cloud service basically like name that service. So it's
As a generality, before you get into cloud, you should be familiar with the main three triad: compute, networking, storage. Those three categories of concepts you need to be intimately familiar with, because in order to actually be able to leverage things like platform as a service, right? Well, you're using that platform to build your applications on. What you need to understand, how to actually use, blob storage and stuff. You have to understand what blob storage is, and all that.
Yeah. Worry about the ground before you worry about the cloud.
Yeah. Don't tackle a bear. We have different analogies, but they kind of mean the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's very similar to what you guys talked about regarding cybersecurity before.
Same idea.
Yeah, kind of. You have to. You can't secure what you don't understand. You can't cloud what you don't understand.
Yeah.
Because if you never worked with something like VMware, it's just to quickly jump in. Like if you don't understand like how to make a virtual machine, adding it to the cloud is just gonna have a lot of it's the whole fundamentals problem. You need to make sure you're building up and not just jumping ahead. Anyway, go on, Jeremy.
I think I'll ask one more question.
Sure.
So that is, what can I document to demonstrate a portfolio of experience if I'm trying to break into IT? Is like documenting labs.
Programmers are really the only guys that have portfolios because they work on an application and with enough credit there to say like, hey, Kelvin did this, and this, and this is his GitHub and that kind of thing there. And when you're in IT itself, it's harder to do. Labs are kind of meaningless in the sense that you can tell me you have a home lab. I'm like, okay, cool.
But are you running an ASR 9000 and 80 rack servers in your home lab?
Well, there's that. It's like so there's that problem. Sure, and two, it's like you tell me like, okay, well, I set up my own domain controller or something like that. It's like, okay, well, how do I know this actually set up properly? How do I know you didn't just Google that and do it there? How do I know that it's not like the biggest disaster I've ever seen, or that Kelvin wrote it and did it, which is basically the same thing I just said. So labs are a bit iffy now. Everyone, you're expected to have some kind of lab there, like once you get past the CCNA level, like you're just kind of expected to have some kind of labbing.
Yeah.
Like if you're telling me in a CCP interview you have your own lab there, I'm like, okay, yeah, the sky is blue. Like,
you're breathing oxygen. That's kind of the
yeah,
expectation.
good for you, but like it's so you want to make sure that you are how do I want to put it? So labs are kind of out in that sense there. Now you can have when you're in an interview, we can talk about it and that kind of thing there, but if it comes up, but I don't want to necessarily read that on your resume. It's better just to not forget the networking. So if you help one of these communities and like Jeremy or Keith Parker, the Discord stuff, or Reddit or whatever.
Or Reddit.
It doesn't really matter, but as long as you're helping and like if we see that I'm just going to pick a random name, the phase. The Discord's not updating, but
it took you a while to remember what you just said, Don.
Yeah, well,
old age hitting you pretty hard there.
Yeah, exactly. But if we see that he's helping out and constantly offering like explanations and that kind of thing there, like maybe if I have like a job coming up there, or Calvin has a job, or Jeremy, like we'll say like, hey, let's reach out to that guy, and or maybe we'll put you in touch with someone we know who's looking for like that's kind of where it comes more into it there. But unless like you're literally making like a network like program, like something like Jeremy Stretch did with Netbox, it's kind of hard to say that hey, I implemented this network. It's like, well, unless you're a consultant, you can't really talk about that. And well, I mean, if you're not a consultant, you didn't do real work. You just kind of did your own lab thing. And if you are a consultant, you have to be careful about what you say there. I can't just take one of my old clients from my VAR days and say like, hey, I did this, and walk you through all the stuff there, because I'd have to like sanitize it and get permission and that kind of stuff. Like it's a complicated thing, because certain environments like the DoD or whatnot there, if you even say like an IP address in a scheme, you're going away for quite a while. Like, so anyway, long story short, no real way of doing that there, but just build up your name in various communities there, and eventually that might mean something, especially if you build out your LinkedIn, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I will add on to that by saying that just because you can't lean on your lab and say, hey, this is my experience in an interview for a technical position, it doesn't mean you shouldn't lab, right? You should absolutely still be practicing those concepts, because you're building those skills that will come into play in an interview. You're building up your ability to be able to confidently talk about OSPF, to be able to confidently talk about BGP. That will help you in an interview. To clarify what Don's saying there, he's just saying that if you build out your Active Directory environment there to lead off of his example, it's not an amazing idea to lean on that as your experience, but you can use the knowledge that you gain from tinkering with AD there to be able to talk about your AD skills in an interview.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, it would be nice if network engineers had something like GitHub, or like could show these projects they've built like programmers, but you can't. NetHub, yeah. But just building a lab itself isn't, it's not like building an app.
Because we're expecting it.
Yeah, it's just a part of studying,
Yeah, like it's especially since things are so easy these days. There, like you can just buy CML and build topologies and build it up, that kind of thing. Like it is what it is. I mean, networking is largely more of a trade than anything else, so it's hard to build that kind of stuff up, but gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
I want to point out, you mind, Jeremy? I want to point out a joke in the chat here that I laughed at from Bim Mara. What do you call a group of network engineers? An outage. I like that one.
It's true. Okay, and so to wrap it up, I'd like to shout out once again Geo in the Discord, who gave another very generous super chat, another $100.
Wow!
And I want to work in an SOC, like you said.
So we can talk for a bit more. What was the question, or is it?
No question, just a heart. Thank you, Gio.
Oh,
Shout out. See you in the Discord.
Waste of $100.
So what question should we say he should have asked?
Yeah, I was going to say let's wrap it up, but just because of that, we can do another question.
Yeah, I just got to think.
Yeah, you're sponsoring another person's question, so you should feel good about yourself, Gio.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me think here. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that we should have?
I will let Jeremy curate the chat because I scrolled up and I got too lazy to scroll now.
All right. Here, I'll ask a question I had written down before. After CCNA, what should someone do? Let's say they have no experience. They got their CCNA. Should they go on to CCNP studies or, well, there's an answer.
Get experience.
Yeah, that's he's joking, but like, yeah, that's the next step there. Like, ideally, you want to work for about a year in the networking role before you start doing your CCNP, or you want to be able to show that you're working in a networking heavy role that it would make sense that you dove into CCNP faster, so like a knock or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working like tech support, like I'm not gonna buy and say like, okay, well, you got your CCNP, well, rebooting Windows computers, right? No.
Yeah, it's kind of like riding a bike, right? You don't get off the training wheels one day and then learn how to ride without training wheels and then immediately start biking up Mount Everest, right? It's just you need to get practice and well versed in riding on flat terrain without training wheels, and then you can go try to bike up Mount Everest. But taking it back to networking there, if you want to, firstly, when you get your CCNA from a certification standpoint, let it bake, right? One of the most common mistakes I end up seeing when people go from CCNA to CCNP is they will start off shaky on the CCNA. Like, just because you're a CCNA, you pass with an 825, which is the bare minimum score to pass, that you're not, you may be a CCNA, but there's definitely improvement that you could make to be a stronger CCNA, right? Build that stronger foundation like Don and I were talking about earlier. And then what some people will do is they'll take a shaky CCNA and then they'll jump straight to a CCNP, which assumes that you are a solid CCNA, and then you build a shaky CCNP. And then the effect just multiplies. It's a set of dominoes, right? And so what I always advise when you get a CCNA is I use the term let it bake, right? Let it bake in an oven, let those skills develop and really strengthen themselves. And then once you feel comfortable, if you want to, start studying for the CCNP, knock yourself out, right? If that is part of your plan, if you really want to get into CCNP, no one's going to stop you. Have fun, but at least first make sure your CCNA is real rock solid before you try to
agree with that. And just to close it up there, I would say that also part of the reason for wanting to work for a year is that the CCNA is not everything that you need to know. So like for obvious reasons. So like when you work, you're gonna have to figure out like, hey, I need to figure out how Outlook works. I need to write a report for the boss. I need to make a Visio diagram. I need to figure out how they do this stupid ticketing system or how they log in, and like you're gonna learn all the other peripheral stuff there that is kind of expected when someone hires a CCNP or a CCIE or whatever. They're not hiring a CCP necessarily for the knowledge. They're also trying to hire the experience, and they're expecting that you're at least a solid year of good experience when you're a CCNP on average. I mean, so like, and no one's going to want to hire a CCIE if they like just never used Visio before. Like that's not going to make sense. Right?
Yeah.
And one more note for me, actually, and then we'll actually close up, is that I forgot to mention this, the gap, right? When you're trying to jump from a CCNA to a CCNP, or actually even more so when you're trying to jump from a CCNP to a CCIE, especially now without the formal CCIE written, the gap is pretty significant, right? And so on that note of, you need some other knowledge before you can really make a good go at the CCNP, both from the perspective Don talked about, which is your more peripheral business skills, but also even the technical skills, right? Because CCNA isn't going to cover everything that you need from a technical perspective either to, for you to smoothly, jump into CCNP. So you could, go straight from the CCNA to the CCNP, but it'll be a rocky journey at best and a downright painful one at worst. So you want to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I said I was going to wrap up, but I did mention in the Discord dumps. Briefly talk about dumps.
We all talk about that.
What are dumps and why are they bad? Why should you not use dumps?
You know what? Shameless plug. CBT Nuggets
content
actually has a really good article on it.
Yep.
It's in our rules. If you go, the rules that you agreed to supposedly when you joined the Discord server there. In the rules, there is a link to a CBT Nuggets article that's really good on why brain dumps are absolute shit. Gonna put one in the swear jar there.
Is that the one called "The Dangers of Exam Dumps"?
The Dangers of Exam Dumps. Really good explanation. But TLDR, what a brain dump is someone will go in, take an exam, they will memorize the questions, memorize the answers. And then they will post the actual exam questions and answers online for people to look at. And the idea with dumpers is that they will look at these questions and then basically cheat their way to a CCNA. Obviously, this is a super shitty move. Sorry, one more in the swear jar there. Trust me, there's going to be a few more. There's going to be a few more, Jeremy. Obviously, this goes again, this violates basically every legal agreement, moral code, ethical code, whatever you want to call it, that you have with Cisco when you take the exam. Because right before you take the exam, there's an agreement called the non-disclosure agreement that you gotta read through and click on accept. And that agreement says that you're not going to disclose the content of the exam, and B, you're not going to use disclosed content to cheat your way through the exam. So long story short, don't dump. And if anyone tries to entice you into dumping, don't do it. It is a stupid move. And the worst, literally the best case scenario is you get certified and you're a useless certified individual because you don't actually understand topics. Because Don talks about this very often. What people don't consider when they dump a cert is that you actually have to be able to do the things that you're certified to do, right? You have to be able to configure OSPF. And then that's the best case scenario is you're useless. The worst case scenario is that you get banned from Cisco certification program for life, or any vendor certification program for life, because there's no vendor that'll tolerate it. And it's a really awkward conversation to say, look, interviewer, I'm banned from Cisco certs because I cheated that one time. So don't do it. It's an idiotic move. I will let Don, put his touches on that rant if he wants.
Yeah, I think you got most things there. I'll just add that comment from what I remember is that it'd be especially a stupid move to do a dump when you work for the vendor that made the certification, and they would probably consider that a reason to discontinue any relationship. So I wouldn't recommend doing such things there, and ignoring that particular scenario, it's just not going to work out. I've been hiring people or interviewing people for quite a while, and you can always tell when someone's dumped, or they're just shaky. They have no real understanding of things and whatnot, and it makes everything harder, because then Cisco has to make the exam harder because they have to get around those kind of things there, and then you guys have to study more, and it's just this endless cycle where the reason why you're doing all these sims and multiple question types and all the kind of stuff there, it's just they're trying to make it harder for these kind of people to do it, and it's just make sure you learn it properly. If we have more time, I can tell you all kinds of embarrassing stories. I might have already shared some with Jeremy in other streams. I can't remember when I'm ranting about random things, but so anyway, just make sure you when it just ties into what Kelvin was saying, just make sure your CCNA is as solid as possible. So you want to make sure you're the best foot forward. There's not a lot of fat on the CCNA, so at least this version of it. So it's all worth knowing in various degrees. And then honestly, the reality is it's really not that hard. It sounds hard because you don't know what subning is right now and you're learning there, but when you look back at so the DevNet professional Kelvin and I did there, where it's basically write 100 Python scripts in 2 hours.
Every question makes you want to cry.
And it's oh my god, why are you asking me about OAuth again? But so like when you go for that kind of experience, and it's like
Yeah.
you kind of look back at the CCNA, it's like, it wasn't so bad when they asked me what
Yeah.
access port
You know,
was.
it's kind of like learning how to walk, right? When you start, you fall over. But now that I'm a fully functioning adult, I think walking is a breeze, except when it's not. I slipped on mud yesterday, which is fun. But
Yeah,
except when it's not. But
okay, we got another super chat question, so I think we'll cover that one from Network Bruh.
Why
He also
not?
makes some videos on YouTube.
yeah, why not?
This one's directed at Kelvin. He says, "You've said
Oh,
in the
fun.
past you don't like simlets on exams. They are back now. What are your thoughts on that?"
Ooh.
Oh, fun. Okay, so I've said in the past, he's right. I've said in the past that I don't like the way that they did simplets. I'm not against performance-based testing. Let's clarify that. I'm not against the idea of having lab items on the exam. I have said that the 200-301 is a fine exam, even if it's multiple choice only, because you can test on practical items using multiple choice questions. Counterintuitive, but you can test on, for example, reading output and deciphering some sort of conclusion based on an output, right? That you can test on those practical items. But simulations are, I shouldn't call them simulations if they're actually running real gear. Emulations, I'll call them lab items. If they are back in a robust way, I'm all for them. It makes it a better exam. But I didn't like the old simulets back in the day because, and a lot of people have talked about it. The old simulets from back in the day were very primitive. I actually remember getting into a bit of a heated discussion with one of the Cisco exam or certification support team members. I actually remember getting into that discussion because I claimed that a particular question on my RAD exam was broken, a particular simlet was broken. And they're very adamant, well, no, other people have answered it correctly. So I went back during my second try to I looked at it again. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's broken, but here's why people have been able to answer it, because one element works right. And so, when they did the simulets that way, they weren't very valuable exam items. If they're doing it better now, I'm all for it. I haven't seen what they actually look like yet. So I will get a good look when I go for Cisco exam one these days here. But yeah, long story short, if they're doing it right, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'll just my 2 cents is that I've done Cisco exams for quite a while now, and yeah, the earlier sims, the problem with them were they were glorified Flash animations. So you would basically it'd be like a less functional packet tracer, if that's even possible. And it would,
apparently it is.
Yeah, and you would have like there'd be some inflexibility, I guess you can call it, and not just how you solve the question, but they wouldn't get crazy with how you actually configure things. Like I remember I did the MPLS exam back when I first did the what became the CCNP service provider, and the sim on that was basically that RIP wasn't enabled on a route there, and it was nothing like troubleshoot any MPLS stuff. It's just like RIP was down and the reason for that was basically that they didn't want to program that, and likewise it was always like something similar where it's or no shut in interface, or maybe an add access that it was relatively simple, easy points, and they were worth a fair amount of money because of the points because of the effort. So what they ended up being was they were like a lifeline where if you're sucking in the other parts of the exam and you pass a couple sims, you might just pass the exam. Whereas I really liked the new version when it first came out because it basically said, okay, look, here's 100 questions. We're going to test every single topic. And this is purely, we're not losing anything there because we're basically saying, hey, look at this routing table. What happens if we change this? And like they can get pretty close to what you would expect from a practical examination. Now, I haven't taken a Cisco exam since the update either. When I get some time, I'll probably do the service provider one there because I lost my upgrade back in the day. Long story short, once I get there, my current theory is that they are using basically CML,
IOL.
yeah, IOL or iOS to do the Sims, and that's basically just from talking for Cisco for the various years about what they were trying to do, and it makes sense to me, but I haven't heard any confirmation. But if it is indeed a real router, then they can be much more mean about what they're questioning you. So they can say, you know what, maybe not now, but like maybe in the next version, they'll say, you know what, configure a branch fully. And here's 3 routers and a couple switches and go. And then you can do all the requirements, kind of like a mini CCA kind of thing. Now, if that is what they're going for, I'm all for that. And there's some questions there when you get to more advanced things. They're like SD-WAN and Nexus, and they can be run too, but like stuff that isn't easily.
Like SD-WAN, if you don't have at least 32, 64 gigs, you're not getting anywhere with that.
Yeah, it depends on how serious they are about it. But like the simple routing and switching stuff, like if they are doing that, I have no problem with it. I will say what they ask for, and they're going to regret it.
I will say, and it would be interesting to see how they're actually, trying to balance things here, trying to toe the line. But one of the concerns about performance-based items on the more associate level exams, on the more entry level exams, is that you have to strike a good balance between being too easy, like Don mentioned, like in the old simulets back in the day, where giving points essentially if you had half a clue of what you were doing. And then you have to balance that alongside not making it so hard that your CCNA becomes a CCIE, right? The CCIE can get away with practical items because they have no qualms about being dicks. Sorry, putting another one in the word right there. They have no qualms about making super difficult tasks, putting in nearly impossible requirements that you have to think really outside the box for, because that's what you're certifying for. You're certifying to be an expert. You really have to understand tech. That's fair game. In the CCNA, there are lots of things that are not fair game. There are lots of things where I would raise hell if they tried to test the CCNA on. And so one of the things that I'd be interested in seeing how Cisco does and how Cisco does it is balancing these two extremes, making sure that the sims are just right to where they really make sure that you can implement and troubleshoot and do whatever with these concepts, with these technologies, while also not trying to mimic a CCIE.
And just to wrap this point up, like the CCIE stuff there, like even if you're trying to do like CCNA level topics, like common CCIE lab thing that they've had for about a decade now or more is like they'll say like configure like a trunking encapsulation that uses a 4-bit header, or and if you, or they might say like that doesn't tag all VLANs, or even that kind of question is kind of getting into the unfair territory for like a CCNA, because you might know that 8021X or 802.1X 8021 doesn't tag all VLANs and that kind of stuff there. Like it's getting a bit more unreasonable. So it'd be interesting to see the balance and how far they push it. And there's other considerations too. Like if you start adding more and more to the sim there, then it becomes like, okay, do you just fail if you
like how you do, like the CCIE has no partial scoring. You either get all the points for a task, or you don't. So so if they try to pull that for a CCNA, what's the balance there in terms of, do you do partial scoring? How to what extent do you do partial scoring? It's a difficult conversation, which is why I have getting back to Network Brow's question, which is why I've been hesitant to say about certain kinds of performance-based questions on these associate level exams. It's a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that all makes sense. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up. This has been a good session. Just shout out to 2 more super chats. No questions, but thank you 15 Hong Kong dollars from Wing Yip. Thank you very much. We got $2 from Corey de God. He just says, I'm just here so I don't get gecked. I'm not sure what gecked means, but
it's a Chuck. It's a network Chuck Discord thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke in that Discord.
There we go. All right. So yeah, this has been a good session. Thank you guys. If people want to follow you or get in touch with you, where can they find you? Donald, how about you? Everywhere.
He's even on Reddit half the time.
Oh, I've been neglecting my Reddit use one. Maybe I'll come back this year. But so I'm on basically all the networking discords. I'm working with Todd Lamley a lot on a few books there. Also, he has a streaming site, lamley.com, which has CCNA for your CCIE training for basically all your stuff there. So he's turning that into quite their own streaming service on its own. And we're also working with INE to make some automation courses throughout the year. So and probably some Juniper content when we get around to it. And otherwise, yeah, I have a YouTube channel I've been sadly neglecting, so I got to make some content soon. I have a blog that I've been really neglecting. Hey,
so your wife take over?
She did make the last post or two. So
or two? There's another one.
Maybe, I don't know.
I haven't looked. Why would I look?
But anyway, long story short, yeah. So anyway, if you want to find me, I'm not too hard to find. LinkedIn, I'm also on there. If you want to add me, I'll typically connect with you and help you grow your network that way there. And if they're talking about Cisco, I'll probably show up eventually and start yelling at you.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember the exact reference, but you say Cisco 3 times. Eventually, one of us will show up.
Yeah.
And then when one of us shows up, we'll ping the other. So as far as I go, I'm a CBT Nugget trainer, as I mentioned, so you can find my content on there. I'm on pretty much every networking Discord that I'm active on, like 6 of them. So chances are, if you pick one at random, you'll find me. I'm not on Reddit. I don't intend to be. So I will leave that domain firmly to Don's purview. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah, pretty much it.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everyone, for watching. If we didn't get to your question, sorry about that. And we could
just ask us in Discord.
Yeah, exactly. So my Discord channel is linked in the top of the description. So if you want to ask questions, we're happy to help. Join us on Discord. Discord. All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. See you next time.